I shuffled down the crowded street, my eyes darting from one passerby to another. Horns, tails, scales, a sea of demonic features surrounded me. Despite my lack of scales or a tail, my own tiny red horns marked me as one of them. Just another face in the crowd of demons going about their day. Yeah, you heard that right. I'm a demon. Not the soul-stealing, human-tricking kind you might be thinking of, though. Nah, we're just another race in this crazy world I've found myself reincarnated into. Wild, right? As I weaved through the throng, I couldn't help but notice the mundane normalcy of it all. Demons munching on apples and oranges as they hurried to work. Others lazily strolling towards cafes, bread in hand. It was almost disappointingly ordinary. Me? I had my sights set on the old Furland Grand Theatre. The humans had just released a new flick, Rome Can't Be Touched or something like that. Some historical drama starring that big-shot actor, Louis Light. As the theater came into view, I felt my eyebrows rise. The line for tickets snaked around the block, a writhing mass of horns and tails. Now this was unusual. I mean, I'm no stranger to the Furland, but I'd never seen it this packed. So there I stood, a demon among demons, waiting to get a glimpse into the world of humans. Funny how things turn out, isn't it? The line crawled forward at a snail's pace. By the time I reached the ticket booth, I'd counted every crack in the sidewalk twice over. The old receptionist peered at me from behind thick glasses, his wrinkled hand outstretched for my ID. I couldn't help but chuckle as I pushed back my hood. One ticket, please. Recognition flickered in his rheumy eyes, and a smile creased his face. Well, if it isn't young Prince Arthur. Our most loyal patron. He rummaged around for a moment before sliding a ticket across the counter. This one's on the house, Your Highness. I know you've been itching to see this film. I blinked, taken aback. Seriously? He winked, his grin widening. Of course. I own this theater, remember? Wouldn't joke about free tickets. Thanks, I managed, genuinely touched by the gesture. But my warm fuzzy feelings didn't last long. The grumbling from the queue behind me saw to that. Ugh, look at the old man sucking up to the useless prince. Yeah, most worthless royal in history. Why even bother with him? Nothing like his brothers, is he? Just trash. All he does is drool over human films and books. Total failure. I had to stifle a laugh. They sounded just like my parents. At least I was consistent in disappointing everyone. The old guy's smile faltered, he'd clearly heard the comments too. He gave me a sympathetic nod, wordlessly urging me inside. I shot him a grateful look and scurried into the theater, leaving the muttering crowd behind. As the cool, popcorn-scented air washed over me, I couldn't help but grin. Let them talk. I had a date with ancient Rome, and nothing was going to spoil it. Besides, being the family disappointment had its perks. No one expected anything from you, which meant you could do whatever the hell you wanted. And right now, what I wanted was to lose myself in a human story for a couple of hours. As I settled into my seat, the lights dimmed, and the familiar excitement of a new film washed over me. The screen flickered to life, and I leaned back, ready for whatever Rome had to throw at me. As the opening credits rolled, I couldn't help but glance around the dimly lit theater. Demons packed most of the seats, their horns creating a sea of shadowy silhouettes. Here and there, I spotted the stocky forms of dwarves, a rare sight in these parts. Guess I wasn't the only one with a thing for human flicks. The film, Rome Can't Be Touched, was an adaptation of one of my favorite books, Rome Will Conquer. I'd been itching to see how they'd bring it to life on the big screen. As the story unfolded, I found myself getting sucked in. It followed this guy Nero, no, not the emperor, just some dude with the same name, born in 20 BS, to some fancy Roman family. The usual story, you know? Kid learns to ride horses, swing a sword, all that jazz. But then he grows up and becomes Caesar's rival. Classic underdog tale. Oh, right. I should probably explain the BS thing. It stands for Before Solaris. See, back in the day, humans didn't have their big, powerful god. It was all old-school deities running the show. Then bam. This Solaris faith pops up out of nowhere and suddenly it's all the rage with humans. And get this, they start getting weirdly powerful. I mean, before Solaris came along, humans were basically demon chow. Sure, They had their little empires and whatnot, but compared to demons? Please. As the film rolled on, I found my initial excitement waning. Don't get me wrong, Lewis Light was killing it as always, but the story? Not so much. Halfway through, I was fighting the urge to groan out loud. Looks like the director decided to get creative with the adaptation. And by creative, I mean they butchered it. So much for staying true to the source material. The grumbling from the other demons told me I wasn't alone in my disappointment. Great minds think alike, I guess, even if those minds belonged to demons who'd probably love to see me fall flat on my face. I shook my head, a sigh escaping my lips. What a letdown. If I ever got the chance to make a film, I'd never pull this kind of stunt. Stick to the story, people. Is that so hard? And then, out of nowhere, ding. You have awakened the entertainment system. Wait, what? I blinked, staring at the transparent interface that had just popped up in front of me. Glancing at the demon next to me, I tried to gauge if I was the only one seeing this weird floaty menu thing. The demon caught me looking and shot me a disgusted glare that clearly said, "Stop being weird, you freak." Right. So I'm either going crazy, or this is some kind of personal hallucination. Fantastic. Unable to focus on the train wreck of a movie anymore, I decided to bail. As I shuffled past annoyed demons, sorry, not sorry, my mind was racing. An entertainment system? What the hell did that even mean? Leaving already, Your Highness? I turned to see the old guy at the ticket booth, eyeing me curiously. Yeah, I shrugged, trying to act normal while a freaking magical menu hovered in my vision. Film's not up to snuff. He chuckled, shaking his head. What can we expect from dumb humans, eh? I forced a laugh and nodded, not really in the mood to defend human creativity at the moment. My mind was too busy trying to process whatever the hell was going on with this system. As I strode away from the theater, I stroked my chin, eyeing the interface warily. An entertainment system, huh? Was this some kind of cosmic joke? Or had I finally cracked under the pressure of being the family disappointment? Either way, one thing was clear, my boring day had just gotten a whole lot more interesting. And potentially more insane. But hey, when you're a demon prince who'd rather watch human flicks than learn the finer points of soul-crushing, what's a little madness between friends? Now, if I could just figure out how to use this thing without looking like I was swatting at invisible flies. I glanced around to make sure no one was watching, then tentatively reached out to touch the floating interface. To my surprise, my finger actually made contact with something. It wasn't solid, more like a tingle of energy. Suddenly, a new notification popped up. First mission, make your first ever film that will be a box office success. Reward, computer technologies. I nearly tripped over my own feet. Computer technologies? As in, the stuff of my previous life? My mind started racing with possibilities. Programming, video games, and who knows what else. It was like being offered the holy grail of entertainment. And all I had to do was make a successful film? Huh. Piece of cake. I mean, how hard could it be, right? Right? As I walked down the bustling demon-filled street, my excitement was tempered by the reality around me. Sure, we'd entered the industrial age, but let's face it, our entertainment scene was about as exciting as watching paint dry on a hellhound. Don't get me wrong, the books and films we had were keeping me from losing my mind completely. But if I'm being honest, I was bored out of my skull most of the time. There's only so many times you can read 101 Ways to Terrorize a Human before it gets old. But now? Now I had a chance to shake things up. To make this world a little less dull, a little more fun. I couldn't help but grin. Me, the family disappointment, the demon who couldn't even summon a decent fireball, I was going to revolutionize entertainment in this world. Of course, there was the small matter of actually making a film. And making it successful. Oh, and doing it all without anyone finding out about my magical floating computer buddy. No pressure or anything. But as I looked around at the same old dreary demon world, with its predictable chaos and mind-numbing evil routines, I felt a spark of determination. This world needed a shake-up, and I was just the demon to do it. Now, if I could just figure out where to get a camera in a world that thinks moving pictures means portraits that occasionally blink. This was going to be interesting. And by interesting, I mean probably a complete disaster. But hey, at least it wouldn't be boring. First things first, though. I needed cash. Cold, hard demon dollars to fund this crazy film project of mine. I had about $10,000 squirreled away in savings. Now, before you start laughing, let me put that in perspective. In my previous life, that would be like $100,000. Not too shabby, right? Except when you compare it to my siblings' savings. Then it's about as impressive as a imp's fireball. But who cares? For once, I had an advantage. Sure, it was a weird, possibly hallucination-induced advantage, but I'll take what I can get. As I trudged towards Furland Bank, my mind was buzzing with film ideas. What could I make on a shoestring budget that would still knock demons' socks off? I thought back to some classic low-budget hits from my previous life. Night of the Living Dead? Nah, demons would think it's a comedy. The Blair Witch Project? Please, that's like a typical Tuesday in the demon realm. Clerks? That could work if I replaced the convenience store with a soul trading post. But first, I needed to get my hands on a decent camera. And not just any camera, a color one. I'd been tinkering with camera tech for a while now. See, while I'm about as magically gifted as a potato, I've got a knack for mechanics. Go figure. I even tried praying to the dwarven god of craftsmanship once. Fat lot of good that did. Turns out, demon prayers don't exactly zoom to the top of their priority list. Finally, I reached Furland Bank. As I walked in, the smell of brimstone and old money hit me like a wall. Ah, the sweet aroma of capitalism, demon style. I'd like to withdraw my entire savings, I told the teller, trying to sound princely and not at all like I was about to blow it all on a harebrained scheme. The teller's eyes bugged out so far I thought they might pop out of her skull. Which, isn't entirely impossible for some demon subspecies. She scurried off to get the manager, faster than a human running from a hellhound. The manager appeared, all oily smiles and obsequious bows. Prince Arthur. What an unexpected pleasure. We just need to verify your identity. Standard procedure, you understand. Yeah, standard procedure, my horns. But I plastered on my best I'm a prince don't question me smile and went along with it. Signatures were scribbled, identities confirmed, and finally, I had my cash. As I walked out, I could practically hear the whispers. There goes the worthless prince, probably off to waste his money on more human nonsense. If they only knew. I was about to create something this realm had never seen before. A cinematic masterpiece. Or a complete train wreck. Either way, it was going to be one hell of a show. With my newly acquired funds burning a hole in my pocket, I set my sights on the center district. If there was a decent camera to be found in this realm, that's where it'd be. I shuffled over to the nearest bus stop, trying not to look like I was carrying enough cash to buy a small hellhound farm. A few minutes later, a bus that had definitely seen better days, probably in the last century, screeched to a halt in front of me. I climbed aboard, the smell of brimstone and regret hitting me like a wall. As I plopped down on a seat that was more spring than cushion, I could feel the weight of demonic stares boring into me. Great. Just what I needed, an audience. Part of me wanted to stand up and announce, yes, it's me, your favorite trashy demon prince. Please, hold your applause. But even I'm not that self-deprecating. Instead, I just sank lower in my seat and pretended to be fascinated by the graffiti on the window. Humans suck, how original. After what felt like an eternity, we finally reached the center district. I practically leapt off the bus, grateful to escape the silent judgment of my fellow passengers. As I approached the electronics market, a wall of noise hit me. For a place selling cutting-edge tech, it sounded more like a medieval bazaar than a Best Buy. But that's demon commerce for you. Why have a quiet, orderly shopping experience when you can have chaos and haggling? The market sprawled out before me, a maze of stalls mostly run by dwarves. And the noise? By all that's unholy, it was deafening. They were shouting, bargaining, and occasionally threatening customers with well-crafted hammers, and was that a chicken? In an electronics market? I wove through the crowd, dodging elbows and the occasional fireball, someone haggling over prices, no doubt. The cacophony was enough to give even a demon a headache. As I weaved through the chaos of the market, a familiar face popped into my mind. George, my dwarf buddy. We'd spent countless hours tinkering with gadgets together, though most of our experiments ended with a bang. Literally. The guy had a talent for making things go boom. Still, he might know where to find a decent camera. Or at least point me in the direction of someone who wouldn't try to sell me a cardboard box with camera scribbled on it. I found George in a quiet corner of the market, looking about as lively as a gargoyle with depression. His stall was a sad display of failed inventions and scorch marks. Poor guy couldn't sell water in the desert. "George. How's it hanging?" I called out, trying to inject some life into the gloomy scene. His head snapped up, eyes widening like he'd just seen a unicorn. "Your Highness," he exclaimed, nearly toppling off his stool in excitement. "Thank the Forge Father you're here." I blinked, taken aback by his sudden enthusiasm. What's got you so fired up?" "I've done it," he practically squealed, bouncing on his toes. "I've finally made a successful invention." Now that piqued my interest. "Oh yeah? What kind of invention are we talking about here?" George's eyes gleamed with manic intensity. He ducked under his stall and emerged clutching, well, I wasn't quite sure what it was. It looked like a cross between a kaleidoscope and a toaster, with a few gears thrown in for good measure. "I call it the chromatic resonance amplifier," he announced proudly, thrusting the contraption at me. I took it gingerly, half expecting it to explode in my face. That's great, George. What does it do?" He launched into a rapid-fire explanation, something about light wavelengths and color separation. Honestly, most of it went over my head, but I caught enough to realize this weird gizmo might actually be useful. "So, let me get this straight," I interrupted his technobabble. "This thing can separate and amplify different colors of light?" George nodded so hard I thought his beard might fall off. "Exactly. I was trying to make a device to cook the perfect toast, but somehow ended up with this instead." I turned the device over in my hands, an idea forming. This wasn't a camera, but with some tinkering. "George, my friend, I think you might have just solved a big problem for me." He looked at me, confused. "But Your Highness, how does this help with toast?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Forget the toast, George. How would you like to be part of a revolution in demon entertainment?" As I began to explain my film project, I could see the gears turning in George's head, metaphorically, though with dwarves you can never be too sure. This odd little invention of his might just be the key to creating a color camera in a world that barely understood black and white. Sometimes, the universe has a funny way of giving you exactly what you need, even if it comes in a package you'd never expect. Or in this case, a package that looks like it might catch fire at any moment. George's eyes lit up like a firework display. You plan to make a film?" He was practically bouncing now. "That's great. Can I be part of it, my friend?" I couldn't help but laugh at his enthusiasm. It was like watching a puppy discover treats for the first time. "Well, maybe you can. And that invention of yours, with my tinkering, we found ourselves a revolutionary camera." George's face scrunched up in confusion. "We? I'm the one that created it. It was supposed to be a perfect toaster." I looked at George, torn between amusement and exasperation. The guy had accidentally invented a key component for color film while trying to make breakfast. He was either the dumbest genius or the most brilliant idiot I'd ever met. Probably both. "Think about it, George," I said, trying to appeal to his practical side, assuming he had one. "With my help, we can create a colored camera." I paused for dramatic effect. "If you do it alone, you might fail and destroy your precious invention." I could almost see the gears turning in George's head. Finally, he nodded. "I guess you're right." Then he jabbed a stubby finger at me. "As long as you get me in your film, I'll agree for you to use my invention." "Deal," I said quickly, before he could change his mind. "Well, what are we waiting for? Let's create this camera." George nodded eagerly and led me to his humble apartment. And by humble, I mean it looked like a junkyard had a wild night out with an electronics store, and this was their love child. The place was cramped, every surface covered with half-finished inventions, spare parts, and what I hoped were just oil stains. The air was thick with the smell of solder and something that might have been George's attempt at air freshener. Or maybe just another failed experiment. I picked my way through the chaos, trying not to knock over anything that might explode. Nice place you got here, George," I lied through my teeth. George beamed, completely missing the sarcasm. "Thanks. It's where the magic happens." Looking around, I had to wonder if by magic he meant barely controlled chaos. No wonder the poor guy's inventions kept failing. His organizational skills made a demon's lair look tidy. But hey, beggars can't be choosers. And right now, this messy dwarf and his accidental invention were my best shot at making demon film history. I rolled up my sleeves, careful not to touch anything sticky. Alright, George. Let's see what we can do with that chromatic, whatever you called it. As George started clearing a space on his workbench, by shoving everything onto the floor, I couldn't help but wonder what I'd gotten myself into. But you know what? For the first time in ages, I felt excited. This wasn't just about making a film anymore. This was about creating something entirely new, something that could change everything. For the next few hours, George's apartment became ground zero for our grand experiment in demon cinematography. We tinkered, we argued, we nearly set fire to George's beard twice, but slowly, something started to take shape. I dug deep into the recesses of my previous life's memories, trying to recall every detail I could about cameras and film. It was like trying to assemble a jigsaw puzzle while riding a roller coaster, but somehow, piece by piece, we made progress. Hand me that thingamajig, I'd say, pointing to a part one couldn't name. You mean the flux capacitor? George would reply, handing me something that definitely wasn't a flux capacitor. Sure, whatever. Just don't let it touch the whatchamacallit or we'll all be wearing our eyebrows on the back of our heads. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of near misses and minor explosions, we had something that looked vaguely camera-like. It was held together with hope, spit, and what I'm pretty sure was George's secret adhesive. I didn't ask, but it was alive. Alright, I said, wiping sweat from my brow, let's see if this thing works. We set up a makeshift projection system, basically a white sheet tacked to George's wall and a lot of crossed fingers. I pointed our Franken camera at George, who insisted on posing like he was accepting an award, and hit what I hoped was the record button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, the wall erupted in color. It wasn't perfect. The image was fuzzy, the colors a bit off. George's red beard looked more like a radioactive carrot, but it was there. In color. We made it. George shouted, jumping up and down so hard I thought he might go through the floor. I couldn't help but grin. We'd done it. We'd created a working color camera prototype without reducing half the district to ashes. In the world of Demon Dwarf collaborations, this was practically a miracle. As I stared at the wobbly, colorful projection of George on the wall, my mind started racing with possibilities. We had the tech, now we needed the story. The Godfather. Now there was an idea. A tale of family, power, and betrayal. Demons would eat that up. With a few tweaks to fit our world, maybe swap out the Italian mafia for warring demon clans, it could be a real hit. I could see it now, the Demonfather. A sweeping epic of a lowly imp rising to become the most powerful demon lord in the underworld. Betrayals, power struggles, maybe throw in a forbidden love story with an elf for good measure. Your Highness? George's voice snapped me out of my reverie. You've got that look again. The one that usually ends with something exploding. I grinned at him, probably looking a bit maniacal. Oh, George, my friend. We're not going to blow anything up. I paused for dramatic effect. We're going to make them an offer they can't refuse. George blinked at me, confused. Is that some kind of demon thing? I laughed, slapping him on the back. No, my vertically challenged friend. It's show business. And we're about to turn the demon world on its head. The next day found me in my room, surrounded by crumpled papers and half-empty coffee mugs. It wasn't quite the disaster zone that was George's apartment, but it was getting there. The life of an aspiring demon filmmaker, I suppose. I hunched over my desk, scribbling furiously as I tried to hammer out the storyline for The Demonfather. The Furland City's warring demon clans were providing plenty of inspiration. We had the Nevermore clan, always cawing about their ancient bloodlines. The Asmodeus bunch, with their fancy suits and even fancier ways of torturing souls. Then there were the Belphegor clan, so lazy they couldn't be bothered to finish their own evil schemes, and the Mammon family, who'd sell their own horns for a quick buck. And at the top of the heap? The Morningstar family. My family. Royal pain in the ass, more like. I grinned to myself. Oh yeah, the Morningstars were perfect for the Corleone role. I could already see myself as Michael, the reluctant heir drawn back into the family business. But who would play the old Don Vito? Then it hit me, the old guy who owned the Grand Theater. With that craggy face and world-weary demeanor, he'd be perfect. Plus, I already owed him one for that free ticket. Time to call in that favor. As I scribbled down notes and sketched out scenes, my mind raced with possibilities. If this worked, if the Demonfather became a hit, we could be looking at a trilogy. Hell, maybe even a whole franchise. The Demonfather, Part 2, Hell's Kitchen. The Demonfather, Part 3, Apocalypse Now. Okay, maybe I was getting ahead of myself. But then reality reared its ugly head. My measly $10,000 suddenly seemed like chump change. Making a film, even a low-budget one, wasn't going to be cheap. I needed a crew, equipment, locations. I leaned back in my chair, running a hand through my hair. Think, Arthur, I muttered to myself. You're a prince, for Satan's sake. Use that to your advantage. Sure, I might be the black sheep of the family, the prince who couldn't even summon a decent fireball. But I was still a morning star. And in this city, that name still meant something. There were a few studios in Furlan City. Nothing fancy, mostly churning out propaganda pieces for the various clans. But they had equipment, they had crews. And more importantly, they had connections. I smiled to myself, feeling a plan start to form. I might be a trash prince in my family's eyes, but to everyone else? I was still royalty. And it was time to use that to my advantage. Grabbing my jacket, I headed for the door. Time to charm some studio execs, call in some favors, and maybe casually mention how disappointed my royal father would be if they didn't help his son with his little pet project. As I left my room, nearly tripping over a stack of demon screenwriting books, I couldn't help but laugh. Who would have thought that being the family disappointment would finally pay off? With a spring in my step and delusions of grandeur in my head, I set off for Demon Pictures, the crown jewel of Furlan City's film industry. These guys were the real deal, even giving those human hotshots in Hollywood a run for their money. The commute took about 30 minutes, most of which I spent rehearsing my "I'm a very important demon prince," speech in my head. By the time I arrived at the towering obsidian building that housed Demon Pictures, I was feeling pretty confident. That confidence lasted about 10 seconds after I walked through the door. "Hold it right there," a burly guard growled, stepping in front of me. His partner, equally muscled and even less friendly-looking, flanked him. "Who are you?" "It's the first time we've seen you here," the first guard demanded. For a moment, I was tempted to puff up my chest and declare, "Don't you see? I'm a demon prince." But looking at their unimpressed faces, I realized my infamous reputation might not have reached this far. So instead, I opted for politeness. Novel concept for a demon, I know. "I am from the Morningstar family," I said, trying to sound both important and non-threatening. Tricky balance, that. Morningstar. The second guard's eyes widened, and for a moment, I thought I'd hit the jackpot. Then they both burst out laughing. "Ha ha ha. If you're from the Morningstar family, then I'm the king of hell," the first guard guffawed. His partner wiped a tear from his eye. "You think you could fool us like that? Shoo. Go away." I stood there, mouth agape, as these two goons laughed in my face. Me, Prince Arthur of the Morningstar clan, being shooed away like some common imp. Part of me wanted to summon a fireball and show them exactly who they were dealing with. But knowing my luck, I'd probably just singe my own eyebrows off. As their laughter echoed through the lobby, I felt my cheeks burning with embarrassment. This was not how this was supposed to go. I was royalty, damn it. Okay, maybe I was the family disappointment, but still. But as I stood there, being laughed at by two meatheads who probably couldn't spell Morningstar if their lives depended on it, something inside me snapped. Not in an "I'm going to rain hellfire upon you" way, I wish, but in a "screw it, I've got nothing to lose" way. I straightened my back, looked them dead in the eye, and said, "Listen here, you overgrown imps. I am Prince Arthur of the Morningstar clan, and I've got a film to make. Now, you can either let me in to speak with whoever's in charge, or you can explain to your boss why you turned away royalty. Your choice." The guards stopped laughing, looking at each other uncertainly. I held my breath, trying to look as princely and intimidating as possible. Which, given my track record, probably wasn't very. As the guards stared at me, clearly trying to decide if they should throw me out or just laugh some more, I felt a mix of embarrassment and frustration bubble up inside me. Time to pull out the big guns. Well, how about a quick look at my ID, esteemed guards? I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm as I fished the card out of my pocket. The guards exchanged a look, probably thinking I was about to show them a badly forged McDonald's loyalty card or something. But they took the ID, their smirks still firmly in place. And then, oh boy, did those smirks vanish. They looked at the card, then at me, then back at the card. I could practically see the gears grinding in their tiny brains as they realized they'd just been laughing at honest-to-Satan royalty. Cough. What does the business of your highness require here? The first guard said, his voice suddenly as polite as a butler at a fancy dinner party. The other one chimed in, do you need a coffee, sir? I couldn't help but chuckle. Amazing how quickly tunes can change when faced with the prospect of royal wrath. You know, I said, tapping my chin thoughtfully, I seem to recall hearing someone say that if I was a morning star, they were the king. The guard who'd made that particular joke looked like he was about to faint. His face went from red to white faster than a traffic light. I couldn't resist twisting the knife a little. Maybe I'll tell my father we have a new king around here. I'm sure he'd be fascinated to hear about it. That did it. They practically fell over themselves apologizing. I am terribly sorry, Your Highness. Please forgive us. We'll do anything, Your Highness. I had to bite my cheek to keep from laughing out loud. This was better than any prank I'd ever pulled. Well, I said, trying to sound magnanimous, if you're really sorry, you can let me in. And tell the receptionist that I have some business with the CEO of this company. The guards hesitated, exchanging nervous glances. Your Highness. We couldn't do it. I raised an eyebrow. Oh? You couldn't? Then I suppose I'll just have a short chat with my father. We'll do it, they practically shouted before I could even finish. I grinned, feeling more princely than I had in years. That's what I'm talking about. As they scrambled to open the doors and alert the receptionist, I couldn't help but feel a little giddy. For once, being a morning star was actually working in my favor. Sure, I might be about to bluff my way through a meeting with one of the most powerful demons in the entertainment industry with nothing but a half-baked idea and a homemade camera. But hey, that's show business, baby. Before I knew it, I found myself face to face with the big cheese himself, Ashen Grey. The demon's presence filled the room, making me feel like a mouse in a lion's den. But I was a royal mouse, damn it, and I had a pitch to make. So, why does your highness want to meet me? Ashen's voice rumbled like distant thunder. I cleared my throat, trying not to sound like a pubescent imp. I'm here to ask for a little favor from your studio. One of Ashen's eyebrows twitched slightly. Favor? I'm planning to make my first movie, I explained, my confidence growing with each word. I thought your studio, with its impressive production capabilities, could help me fulfill my longtime dream of filmmaking. Ashen stared at me, his expression as unchanging as a gargoyle's. Sorry, Your Highness. But I'm afraid I can't help. My heart sank faster than a lead balloon in the river Styx. You see, he continued, still deadpan, our studio has its hands full with several projects. We have no time to help you. I felt the corner of my mouth twitch. It was painfully obvious Demon Pictures wasn't going to help me, and my royal favor carried about as much weight as a feather in a hurricane. Swallowing my pride, I stood up. Well, if you're not available, maybe other studios in this city would be willing to help me. Oh, how wrong I was. Hours later, I trudged back to the palace, empty-handed and thoroughly deflated. The other two major studios had given me the same polite brush-off, and the smaller studios, well, let's just say they were less polite about it. Back in my room, I massaged my throbbing temples and started organizing the papers strewn about. I shoved them into a bag, ready to meet George and show him the script. At least someone was still excited about this project. As I walked down the street, feeling sorry for myself, a poster caught my eye. It was advertising a bank willing to lend money at low interest rates for new businesses. Suddenly, it hit me like a bolt of hellfire. Why beg for help when I could do it myself? Sure, I only had $10,000 now, but what if I started my own film production company? With my royal identity, useless as it seemed today, I could probably secure a loan of around $200,000. My steps quickened as the idea took shape. That kind of money would be more than enough to get started. I could buy equipment, hire a small crew, maybe even rent out a dingy warehouse to use as a studio. I grinned to myself, probably looking like a madman to the demons passing by. But I didn't care. This wasn't just a plan B, this was the plan I should have had all along. Who needs demon pictures when you can have Morningstar Productions? Okay, maybe we'd work on the name. As I hurried to meet George, my mind was racing with possibilities. We'd build our own studio, make our own rules. No more begging for favors or dealing with stuck-up executives. Later that day, I found myself in George's place, which looked like a tornado had a personal vendetta against organization. As I explained my grand plan, George's eyes nearly popped out of his head. What? Arthur, you're borrowing $200,000 from the bank? To make a movie? Are you crazy? His voice hit a pitch I didn't think dwarves could reach. Shut your mouth, little guy, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. I'm not crazy. I'll tell ya, this film of ours will be big. George scratched the back of his head, looking like he was trying to solve a particularly tricky equation. We may have our colored camera, still in development, but even if our film does have colors, it couldn't guarantee its success. It could be a failure and you'll be bankrupt. I felt a bit speechless at that comment. Leave it to George to point out the glaringly obvious flaw in my plan. But I wasn't about to let a little thing like potential financial ruin dampen my spirits. Don't you see? I'm a royal prince, no matter how useless that's been so far, god damn it, I said, puffing up my chest. Let's go to the bank now, and don't complain too much. As we made our way through the cluttered streets of Furlan City, George kept shooting me worried glances. Arthur, are you sure about this? I mean, $200,000 is a lot of money. What if nothing, I cut him off. Look, George, we've got a chance here to do something big. Something no one's ever done before in the demon realm. Are we really going to let a little thing like potential financial ruin stop us? George muttered something that sounded suspiciously like yes, that's exactly what should stop us, but I chose to ignore it. One eternity, and a lot of George's nervous muttering, later, we found ourselves at the bank, face to face with the same oily manager I'd met yesterday when withdrawing my life savings. You wanted to borrow money for your business, Your Highness? The manager was practically salivating, his sly eyes gleaming with poorly concealed greed. I couldn't really blame him. In his mind, he was probably thinking that while I might be a useless demon prince, I was still a prince. And that alone was worth something. It was clear the bank wouldn't care if I succeeded or failed. They'd be willing to lend me money because even if I crashed and burned, they could always squeeze my royal family for repayment, or use my failure as leverage for future favors. Not to mention the PR value of having a prince as a client. I began to explain my business plan, keeping it vague enough to sound impressive without revealing how half-baked it actually was. I didn't need to go into much detail, we both knew this loan was as good as approved the moment I walked in. Sure enough, after my spiel, the manager smiled broadly. Well, Your Highness, your business seems to have potential. I'll approve your proposal. I smiled and thanked him outwardly, while inwardly I was scoffing. Yeah, right. You see potential? The only potential you see is a failing prince making a stupid business decision that you can take advantage of. As we left the bank, loan approval in hand, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and dread. On one hand, I now had the funds to make my dream a reality. On the other hand, I was now $200,000 in debt with nothing but a half-finished camera and a script that may or may not be any good. I looked at George, who seemed to be in a state of shocked disbelief. Well, my vertically challenged friend, I said, slapping him on the back, looks like we're in the movie business now. George just shook his head. I hope you know what you're doing, Arthur. I grinned, feeling a manic energy coursing through me. Of course I do. Now, let's go make movie magic before my family finds out and has me committed to the asylum for wayward princes. As we walked away from the bank, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just lit the fuse on a very large, very expensive firework. Whether it would soar into the sky or blow up in my face remained to be seen. But hey, that's showbiz, right? With $200K burning a hole in my pocket, it was time to set the wheels in motion. First order of business? Finding a place to call our cinematic home. After some hunting, I managed to snag a warehouse in the city's cheapest district for a measly $500 a month. The owner, a blob of a demon with more chins than scruples, was all too happy to take my money after a bit of smooth-talking bargaining. As we stood in front of our new studio, George scratched his head, looking like he was trying to solve a particularly tricky puzzle. Well, this looked okay, I guess? Okay? I said, injecting as much false optimism into my voice as I could muster. It's more than okay. It's very great. I waved my arm dramatically at the cavernous space, ignoring the cobwebs and suspicious stains. We could use this building to house our future equipment, our future crews. This place is great for $500. George's eyebrows shot up. Now that you say it like that, $500 seems to be a steal for such a place. Indeed it is, I said, silently praying that the roof wouldn't choose that moment to cave in. Now, let's continue making that prototype camera of yours look less like a demonic toaster and more like actual film equipment. For the next 2 days, when I wasn't elbow-deep in wires and gears with George, I was pounding the pavement, trying to assemble a crew crazy enough to join my fledgling company. After much deliberation, and a few shots of liquid courage, I decided to name our company Hellfire Studios. I even managed to cobble together a logo, a stylized flame wrapped around a film reel. It looked pretty damn cool, if I do say so myself. As for the crew, I struck gold with a group of fresh graduates from the Infernal Institute of Cinematic Arts. These kids had stars in their eyes and desperation in their hearts. The big studios in town wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pitchfork, no experience, they said. Too risky. These graduates could have tried their luck in other countries, but between the cost of demonic air travel, those magic-powered engines don't run cheap, and the risk of ending up as some human's chew toy, most were reluctant to leave. So when I showed up with my fancy new company name and promises of creative freedom, they latched onto the opportunity like imps to a fresh soul. You mean we'll actually get to make movies? One wide-eyed demoness asked, her forked tail twitching with excitement. That's the plan, I said, trying to sound like I knew what I was doing. We're going to revolutionize the demon film industry. As I looked at their eager faces, a mix of excitement and terror churned in my gut. These kids were putting their dreams in my hands. I just hoped I wouldn't end up crushing them like a clumsy hellhound with a chew toy. But hey, every great director started somewhere, right? And if all else failed, we could always pivot to making infomercials for cursed objects or something. Hellfire Studios was officially in business. Now all we needed was a script, proper equipment, and a miracle or two. But first things first, I needed to figure out how to work the coffee machine in our new office. Because if there's one thing I've learned about the film industry, it's that it runs on caffeine and broken dreams. And we had plenty of both. Just when I thought things were looking up, reality decided to smack me in the face. Literally. There I was, seated in the royal dining room, surrounded by my siblings, mother, the king, and his collection of wives and concubines. The air was thick with tension, and I knew it was all my fault. So much for keeping this little venture under wraps. Bang, you freaking borrowed $200,000 at the Furland Bank. My father's voice, Luke Morningstar, boomed through the room like a thunderclap. I tried not to cower, but let's face it, when the King of Hell is yelling at you, a little cowering is perfectly understandable. Your Majesty, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, the royal family doesn't need to be concerned about it. I'll pay it with my own hands. I wanted to look him in the eye, to show some backbone, but the sheer power radiating off him made it impossible. His sinful magic was practically oozing out of every pore, even though I knew he was holding back. If he ever let loose, well, let's just say I'd rather not think about it. You shouldn't talk back to me. Luke roared. With a casual wave of his hand, I felt myself flying through the air. My back slammed against the wall, knocking the wind out of me. As I gasped for breath, I heard my younger sister, Apollonia, pleading on my behalf. Father. You're hurting him. But her concern was quickly drowned out by the sneers of my older brothers. Let him, little sister. He brought it upon himself, that was my second brother, Arnold, always the dutiful son. Yes. He is a disgrace to our family, Bobby, my third sister, chimed in, not one to miss a chance to kick me while I was down. Quiet. Luke's voice cut through the chatter, like a hot knife through butter. No one talks until I say so. The room fell silent. I groaned, shaking my head to clear the stars from my vision. Through the haze, I caught sight of my mother, her face a mask of cold indifference. No surprise there. In this family, Apollonia was the only one who seemed to give a damn about me. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, my dear old dad decided to drop the mother of all bombshells. "Leave here if you still want to be alive," Luke growled, his eyes burning with a mixture of disappointment and barely contained rage. "Leave this place. Leave this palace." He paused for dramatic effect, because apparently being king of hell means you have to milk every moment. "From now on, I banish you and strip you of your identity as a prince." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Exiled. Stripped of my title. It was one thing to be the family disappointment, but this? This was a whole new level of family dysfunction. "Father." Apollonia's voice cut through the stunned silence, a mix of shock and concern. Luke's head snapped towards her, his gaze enough to make even the bravest demon quail. "Quiet, child. I am the demon king of this realm. Nobody disobeys me. Ever." Apollonia fell silent, but I could see the tears welling up in her eyes. Poor kid. Always trying to stand up for her screw-up big brother. I pulled myself to my feet, wiping a trickle of blood from the corner of my mouth. Guess Daddy dearest had knocked me around harder than I thought. I caught Apollonia's eye, giving her a small nod to say, "I'm fine." Then, squaring my shoulders, I turned to face the king. "I will leave as you wish, father," I said, trying to inject as much dignity into my voice as possible. Which, given that I was bruised, bleeding, and newly homeless, wasn't much. I let my gaze sweep across the room one last time. My mother, cold and impassive as always. My brothers, barely containing their glee at my downfall. And Apollonia, the only spot of warmth in this frigid family tableau. As I turned to leave, the reality of the situation started to sink in. I knew why father was so quick to banish me and strip away my title. It wasn't about punishment or tough love. No, it was all about the money. By cutting me off, he was washing his hands of any responsibility for my debt. If when my business failed, the bank wouldn't be able to come knocking on the palace doors. It would have been pocket change for the royal family to cover that loan. But to my father, even that small amount wasn't worth spending on his trashy son. I was a bad investment, and Luke Morningstar didn't do bad investments. I walked out of the palace gates, my few possessions hastily shoved into a bag. Here I was, about to make a movie about a powerful demon family, and I'd just been kicked out of my own. But you know what? Maybe this was exactly what I needed. No more safety net, no more royal resources to fall back on. Just me, my crazy dream, and a warehouse full of misfits crazy enough to believe in it. Well, nothing says fallen from grace quite like buying a third-hand bed for $20 and shoving it into the corner of a rented warehouse. But hey, when life gives you lemons, make a lemonade stand in hell, right? As I maneuvered the bed into what was quickly becoming my new home/office/film studio, I could feel the confused stares of George and our newly hired crew boring into my back. "Why are you putting a bed in that corner?" George finally asked, voicing what everyone was clearly thinking. I cleared my throat, trying to hide my embarrassment behind a facade of nonchalance. I kind of think that this warehouse has plenty of space." Then I thought, why not use this place for, a home too? "I think I can sleep in this place." The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a demon's claw. The phrase "silence was deafening" had never felt so apartment. George scratched the back of his head, looking at me like I'd grown a second pair of horns. "You're acting weird today." He paused, then added, "Well, you're always acting weird. Let's get to work, guys." "Forget about the bed," I said, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow even to my own ears. Desperate to change the subject, I turned to the writers. "You guys, let's work on this script that I've been writing for days. Help me revise it." As the writers nodded, I addressed the rest of the crew. "As for you guys, we'll be planning our first film together." And so began my new life as an exiled prince turned wannabe film mogul. 2 days blurred together in a haze of script revisions, film planning, and tinkering with our makeshift camera. George and I became experts at dumpster diving in the electronics district, piecing together our equipment from the cast-offs of demons and dwarves alike. One morning, as George and I were on our daily garbage collection run, because nothing says living the dream like picking through trash, I couldn't shake the feeling that more eyes than usual were on me. Sure, I was used to being scrutinized as the family failure, but this felt different. More intense. Suddenly, George called out, "Hey, Arthur. look at this. He was holding up a newspaper, his expression a mix of concern and disappointment. The front page headline hit me like a punch to the gut, Youngest Demon Prince Exiled by King Luke Morningstar. I felt my blood run cold. So much for keeping a low profile. George shook his head, sighing. So you've been exiled. You didn't even tell your old friend. I tried to keep my voice steady, aiming for casual indifference and probably missing by a mile. What use would it be telling you that? It's not that important anyway. George looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of hurt and understanding. Not important? Arthur, you're living in our warehouse. Your whole life has been turned upside down. That seems pretty important to me. I felt a lump forming in my throat. Here was George, my friend who'd stuck with me through failed invention after failed invention, looking at me with genuine concern. And I'd been too proud, too afraid, to confide in him. I didn't want you to think less of me, I admitted, the words feeling strange on my tongue. Honesty wasn't exactly a prized trait in demon society. George snorted. Think less of you? Arthur, I've seen you set your own butt on fire trying to invent a self-warming toilet seat. Trust me, there's not much lower you can go in my estimation. Despite everything, I felt a laugh bubble up in my chest. Leave it to George to find the humor in my royal fall from grace. So, he said, tossing the newspaper aside, what's the plan now, oh great exiled one? I looked at him, then at the piles of electronic scraps surrounding us, and felt a grin spread across my face. The plan, my vertically challenged friend, is to make a movie so good it'll make my dear old dad choke on his morning cup of virgin blood. George grinned back. Now that's the crazy Arthur I know and tolerate. Let's get to it then. These circuits won't salvage themselves. As we resumed our dumpster diving, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Sure, I was exiled, broke, and living in a warehouse. But I had a friend who believed in me, a crew ready to follow my crazy vision, and a dream that not even the king of hell could crush. George and I trudged back to our makeshift studio, our arms laden with bags of electronic scraps. The weight of our haul was nothing compared to the heaviness in my chest after the newspaper revelation. As we dumped our treasure trove of junk onto the floor, George surveyed our loot with a gleam in his eye. These scraps should be enough to help us build lights, mics, and probably another colored camera, he said, rubbing his hands together like a mad scientist about to bring his creation to life. I nodded, trying to match his enthusiasm. Well, that's for sure. But these scraps alone won't do it. We still need to buy important parts from the electronics store, but this stuff saves us a lot of money. We dove into our work, sorting through the pile of technological refuse. It was overwhelming at first glance, a jumble of wires, circuits, and things I couldn't even name. But between my knack for jerry-rigging and George's uncanny ability to make something out of nothing, we were in our element. Though George and I might have a talent for accidentally blowing things up when we tried to invent stuff from scraps, but recreating existing tech, that's a whole different ballgame. As experienced mechanics, well, experienced in making things go boom, at least, cobbling together film equipment from our electronic garbage heap wasn't as daunting as you'd think. Sure, we'd need to buy some key components from actual stores, but hey, that's what our meager budget was for, right? As we were elbow-deep in wires and circuit boards, I noticed a group of our newly hired employees approaching. They were clutching papers in their hands and wearing expressions that made my stomach drop. Oh, guys, what do you need? I asked, trying to sound chipper despite the growing sense of dread. Their response hit me like a ton of bricks. We're actually here to resign. Yes. The others nodded in unison, like a herd of demonic bobbleheads. Me too, echoed voices from across the warehouse. I felt a wave of solemnity wash over me as I realized almost half of my newly hired recruits were jumping ship. 30 of them, to be exact. When I pressed for explanations, all I got were mumbled excuses and averted gazes. As the newly resigned employees filed out, leaving behind the scent of crushed dreams and broken promises, or maybe that was just the smell of our junkyard finds, I turned to the remaining 28 employees. What do you think, guys? Why did they resign? They exchanged glances like kids playing hot potato with a secret. Finally, someone gestured to the pile of newspapers on our salvaged sofa. And just like that, it hit me. The exile. My fall from princely grace splashed across the front pages for all to see. Of course. They'd signed up to work for a prince, not some exiled nobody running a film studio out of a glorified junk heap. Looking at the employees who stayed, I couldn't help but wonder if they were just here for the paycheck. But you know what? At this point, I'd take what I could get. I squared my shoulders, channeling every cheesy motivational speech I'd ever heard. You guys that stayed, I don't know what's your reason for not leaving, but I promise you that you won't regret it. We will be creating our future together, and that will begin with our first film. The words hung in the air, competing with the smell of old electronics and broken dreams. But as I looked at the faces of those who remained a motley crew of demons, few dwarves, I saw something unexpected. A glimmer of hope. A spark of excitement. Or maybe it was just the reflection off our pile of scraps. Either way, I'll take it. So here we were. An exiled prince, a disaster-prone dwarf, and a ragtag team of misfits, crazy enough to stick around. Not exactly the dream team I'd imagined, but hey, every great underdog story starts somewhere, right? 1.5 weeks of sleepless nights, countless coffee runs, and more than a few singed eyebrows later, George and I finally cracked it. Our colored camera was ready, and boy, was it a sight to behold. I gathered the crew around, feeling like a magician about to pull a rabbit out of a hat. Alright, folks. Prepare to have your minds blown. As the first images flickered to life, full of vibrant colors, the gasps were audible. Holy hellfire, someone muttered. It's actually in color. I've never seen moving pictures like this before, another voice chimed in, awe evident in their tone. A young demoness, her eyes wide with excitement, turned to me. We're really going to make a film with this? I couldn't help but grin. You bet your horns we are. As the projection ended, I added, we've got technology the big studios can only dream of. This color camera is our secret weapon. George puffed up like a proud papa. And I'm the one who contributed the most to this invention, he boasted. I chuckled, patting him on the back. Yeah, you're a regular demon Edison. That's why most of the invention patents are in our names. Our names? George squinted at me suspiciously. Clearing my throat, I quickly changed the subject. Now that we've got our camera, it's time to start casting for our first film. Immediately, hands shot up around the room. Boss, can I be in the movie? Who, me too. I've always wanted to be on the big screen. I can play a tree really well. Watch. I held up my hands, trying not to laugh. Whoa, hold your hellhounds there, people. Your crew, remember? Didn't they teach you in film school that you're supposed to stay behind the camera? Look, if we need extras, maybe you can sneak in. But that's it. A chorus of disappointed groans filled the air. Come on, don't look so glum, I said, trying to rally their spirits. Do a killer job on this film, and when it's a hit, you'll all be hot commodities in the industry. Your names in the credits will be worth more than a cameo, trust me. That seemed to do the trick. The energy in the room picked up again as we started discussing the casting process. Obviously, we couldn't afford any big-name actors. But that was fine by me. I had my eye on the hungry up-and-comers, the ones clawing their way up from rock bottom. They'd bring a raw energy to the film that no pampered star could match. Plus, I already had 2 key roles locked in my mind, yours truly as Michael, and that old codger who owned the Grand Theater as Don Vito. It was perfect casting, if I do say so myself. As we dove into the casting plans, I couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. Sure, we were a ragtag bunch of misfits, working out of a glorified junkyard. But we had passion, we had innovation, and most importantly, we had nothing to lose. Later that day, I found myself back at the old Furland Grand Theater. The place was a ghost town compared to the madhouse it had been during the Rome Can't Be Touched premiere. I could count the people in line on one hand, if I were missing 3 fingers. After the whopping crowd of 2 made their way inside, it was my turn to face the ticket booth. The old guy's face lit up with recognition. Oh, Your Highness. Another film to catch today? He chuckled, his eyes twinkling with amusement. I couldn't help but laugh. Your Highness? Looks like someone's behind on the gossip. I'm not exactly Prince Charming anymore. He just sighed, shaking his head. I know about it, kid. You're exiled now. But that doesn't mean I'll treat you any different. I felt a lump form in my throat. Damn, I didn't expect the old codger to hit me in the feels like that. Trying to play it cool, I cleared my throat and got down to business. By the way, old guy. Are you interested? The name's Rocky, he interrupted, raising an eyebrow. I coughed, feeling my face heat up. All these years, and I never bothered to learn his name. Some prince I was. Right. Old Rocky, I corrected myself, trying to salvage some dignity. Are you interested in being an actor? Rocky's eyebrows shot up so high, they nearly disappeared into his hairline. Actor, he repeated, looking equal parts amused and intrigued. Why are you asking? I grinned, sliding a paper across the counter. Here. Give this a read. I've started a film company, and I'm about to make my first picture. Thought you might be interested. As Rocky scanned the paper, his expression grew serious. So. This is the reason you got exiled. Now it was my turn to be surprised. You knew? He nodded, chuckling. Yes. It was all over the newspapers. My mind raced. There was only one demon who could have leaked that info to the press, my dear brother Bobby. That slimeball owned a newspaper, and apparently had no qualms about airing the family's dirty laundry. Pushing thoughts of my backstabbing brother aside, I focused on Rocky. Well, I'll be back tomorrow if you want some time to think it over. No need to wait, Rocky cut me off, a smile spreading across his weathered face. I'm in. I blinked, caught off guard. You're in? Just like that? Rocky nodded, his eyes twinkling with a mischievous light I'd never noticed before. Yes. I'm curious about this film that cost you your royal status. I want to see for myself what could be worth giving up all that prestige. I felt a grin spreading across my face. If an old-timer like Rocky could see the potential, who knows what we could achieve. Well then, Rocky, I said, extending my hand. Welcome to the wonderful world of demon cinema. Hope you're ready for one hell of a ride. I led Rocky to our studio, or as I like to call it, our warehouse of dreams in the Cheap District. The place had filled up quick. Sofas that had seen better days dotted the floor, desks were crammed wherever they'd fit, and my own little corner doubled as both office and bedroom. Our cobbled-together equipment, mostly built from scrap, gave the place a mad scientist vibe. The blackboard, covered in chalk scribbles, looked like we were planning to rob a bank instead of make a movie. And there, in all its glory, hung our pride and joy, the Hellfire Studios logo. It might have been painted on a reclaimed pizza box, but hey, it was ours. I watched Rocky sniff around, feeling my stomach knot up. This was at the moment he realized he'd signed up for a circus instead of a film studio. So, this is your company, huh? Rocky stroked his chin, his expression unreadable. I have to say. He paused, and I braced myself for the worst. I expected much worse. But this? This is quite all right. I felt like I'd just dodged a fireball. Haha, yeah, I laughed, trying to play it cool. It's just the beginning, you know? Rome wasn't built in a day and all that. Rocky's eyes twinkled. Don't worry, kid. I've seen shadier operations turn into gold mines. You've got potential here. Grinning, I clapped my hands to get everyone's attention. Listen up, folks. This distinguished gentleman here is Rocky. He's gonna be in our film. The room went quiet. I could practically hear the gears turning in their heads as they sized Rocky up. Sure, he looked like he'd be more at home feeding pigeons in the park than starring in a movie, but that was the point. He's playing the old Don, I explained, watching understanding dawn on their faces. Trust me, he's perfect for the part. The team nodded, but I could still see doubt in their eyes. What they didn't know was that Rocky was practically Vito Corleone incarnate. His mannerisms, his voice, hell, we'd barely need makeup. With a bit of practice, he'd nail it. George, bless his heart, was the first to break the ice. Well, welcome aboard, Rocky, he said, extending a hand. I'm George, co-founder of this little madhouse we call a company. As Rocky and George shook hands, chatting like old friends, my mind was already racing ahead. We had our Don, we had our Michael, yours truly, but we still needed to flesh out the rest of the cast. Finding more actors who were willing to take a chance on us was the next hurdle. I turned my attention to Klein, our young demon casting director. The poor kid looked like he was about to melt into a puddle of nervous sweat. So, how's the casting going? Found any diamonds in the rough? I asked, trying to keep my tone light. Klein's eyes darted around like he was looking for an escape route. I didn't really find one yet. I could practically see the weight of responsibility crushing him. This was why most companies wanted experienced folks. But me? I had different ideas. Inexperienced people were like blank canvases, ready for me to paint my vision on. They were cheap, they complained less, and most importantly, they were malleable. They'd follow my lead, their whole careers held in my palm like puppets on strings. Whoa there, Arthur. I shook my head slightly. Getting a bit too wizened for comfort. Where's the list of rock-bottom actors? I asked, pushing away my momentary delusions of grandeur. Let's take a look. Klein nodded frantically, handing over a stack of papers. Black and white headshots stared up at me, names scrawled beneath each desperate smile. I flipped through the pages, then looked back at Klein. Where are the resumes? Klein's face went from nervous to oh crap in record time. I've forgotten about it. Before I could respond, another young demon swooped in like a guardian angel. Sorry, boss. We'll just get it at the Actors Guild, he said, already steering Klein towards the door. Please do, Melvin, I nodded, watching as he practically dragged Klein out of the studio. As the door closed behind them, I couldn't help but chuckle. What a mess. But you know what? It was our mess. I looked down at the headshots again. Each face told a story of dreams deferred, of hopes hanging by a thread. These weren't seasoned pros looking for their next big break. These were demons, and the occasional dwarf or other creature, on their last chance, ready to give it their all. 2 days into our casting marathon, and I was starting to feel like we were herding cats. Sure, we'd nailed down some of the side characters, and we had our veto in Rocky. I was set to play Michael, Johnny Lake had snagged Tom Hagen, and a demon named Charles was our Sonny. But the rest of the main cast? Still up in the air. We still needed our Kay, Luca Brasi, Apollonia, Fredo, Johnny Fontaine, Mo Green, Carlo Rizzi, the list went on. At this rate, it'd take us 2 weeks just to fill out the cast list, let alone start filming. I wasn't sweating the minor roles too much. It was the big ones that kept me up at night. Luca Brasi, the Don's loyal muscle, needed to be just right. And Kay? She was Michael's endgame, his anchor. We couldn't mess that up. So there we were, camped out next to the warehouse, watching a parade of hopefuls strut their stuff. The recent rain had left everything smelling fresh, a nice change from our usual ode to demon. We'd strategically positioned ourselves to avoid a suspicious pile that was definitely not fertilizer, courtesy of some local hellhound. George sat next to me, looking like he was one bad audition away from a nap. I couldn't blame him. We'd seen enough bad acting to last several lifetimes. Then, like a ray of sunshine cutting through the gloom, she appeared. A silver-haired elf, so stunning she made even us demons do a double take. I glanced down at her profile. Your furful evergreen? I asked, trying not to sound too eager. She nodded, her face a mask of cool professionalism. I stroked my chin, mind racing. She was auditioning for Kay, and looks-wise, she was perfect. But could she act? You're quite the sight for sore eyes, I said, curiosity getting the better of me. What brings an elf like you to our neck of the woods? Her expression didn't change, but her voice could have frozen hellfire. I prefer not to answer that question. I'm here to audition for the role that caught my attention. Nothing more. I blinked, caught off guard by her frostiness. But you know what? It was refreshing. Fair enough, I said, leaning back in my chair. Well then, Furful Evergreen, show us what you've got. The scene is Kay confronting Michael about his family's business. Action. Furful Evergreen took a deep breath, and in that moment, something shifted. The cool, aloof elf was gone, replaced by a woman torn between love and fear, hope and suspicion. Oh, Michael, she began, her voice trembling slightly. I thought I knew you. I thought, but now I hear these terrible things. I felt a chill run down my spine. This wasn't just good acting, this was alchemy. Furful had transformed herself entirely, her ethereal elven beauty now radiating the all-too-human pain of Kay Adams. George, who'd been half asleep moments ago, was now sitting bolt upright, his eyes wide. Rocky was nodding slowly, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Even our crew, who'd seen dozens of auditions by now, had stopped their usual fidgeting and whispering. As Furful continued her monologue, her voice rising and falling with emotion, I found myself forgetting we were in a makeshift audition space next to a warehouse. For those few minutes, we were transported into the world of our film, watching a pivotal moment unfold. As Furful finished her scene, I found myself nodding approvingly. Was I biased because of her elven beauty? Maybe. But you know what? In this business, sometimes you've got to trust your gut. Klein started with the usual spiel. Okay, that's a good performance. We'll contact you if I cut him off. No need to keep her waiting. I've made my decision. The whole crew looked at me like I'd grown a second head. George leaned in, whispering, we're rejecting her already? Poor guy thought I was about to give Furful the boot, same as all the others. I could see Furful's face cloud over. Clearly, she'd overheard George's not-so-subtle whisper. Time to clear the air. Clearing my throat, I looked Furful straight in the eye. Furful Evergreen, you'll be cast for the role of Kay Adams. That's my decision. The tension in the air evaporated. Furful's frown melted away, replaced by a barely there smile that spoke volumes. She was trying to play it cool, but I could tell she was over the moon. As Furful left, I could feel the team's eyes on me. What? I shrugged. Sometimes you just know. Days rolled by, and our ragtag cast was starting to come together. Our latest addition? Kyle Brook, our Luca Brasi. He is a demon straight out of your worst nightmares, standing at a towering 6 feet 5 inches, built like a brick hellhouse. Kyle was what we called a behemoth, not the actual giant monsters, mind you, just a particularly imposing breed of demon. When Kyle lumbered into the audition, I swear the ground shook. The guy was naturally strong, perfect for Luca's intimidating presence. But here's the kicker, in our looks-obsessed industry, Kyle couldn't catch a break. He wasn't handsome enough for the camera, apparently. As you can see, even in the demon world, we're slaves to human beauty standards. Gotta appeal to the international market, they say. Humans are top dogs now, so we dance to their tune. Kyle's stiff acting was just the final nail in his showbiz coffin. When I announced Kyle was our Luca, you should have seen the looks on everyone's faces. You'd think I'd just suggested we film the whole thing underwater or something. Boss, one of the crew ventured, are you sure about this? Kyle's not exactly good looking. I couldn't help but laugh. Good looking? Guys, he's playing a terrifying mob enforcer. Kyle doesn't need to be pretty, he needs to be scary. And look at him. He's perfect. Kyle, bless his heart, looked like he couldn't believe his luck. You really want me for this? He rumbled, his voice like gravel in a blender. I grinned up at him. Way up. Kyle, my friend, you were born for this role. Just try not to accidentally squash any of the other actors, okay? As Kyle left, practically floating despite his massive size, I turned to the team. See? This is what Hellfire Studios is all about. We don't just think outside the box, we smash the box and build something new. George shook his head, but he was smiling. You're crazy, you know that? Crazy like a fox, Rocky chimed in. Or should I say, crazy like a demon? I couldn't help but grin at their bewildered faces. Well, being crazy enough is what'll set us apart in this industry. You'll see, craziness is just another way of life. My team exchanged glances, nodding along like they were humoring a madman. Which, let's face it, they probably were. But hey, in this business, a little madness goes a long way. One more week of chaos, coffee, and questionable decision-making later, we finally had our cast for The Demonfather. And let me tell you, it was a real motley crew. As for extras? Well, my team suddenly developed a burning passion for being on camera. They were falling over themselves to volunteer, even if it meant juggling their regular jobs. Not that I was complaining, their enthusiasm saved us a bundle, and hey, no one could accuse me of employee abuse. Win-win, right? Our cast was shaping up to be quite the colorful bunch. Take Johnny Lake, our Tom Hagen. He's a devilkin, a breed of demon known for being sharp as a tack and twice as crafty. One look at his sly grin and you knew he was perfect for the role of the family's smooth-talking consigliere. Then there's Charles Flirt playing Sonny. He's what we call a scale demon, still humanoid, but with patches of scales that make him look like he's wearing the world's weirdest body armor. But the guy's got swagger for days, just what we needed for the hot-headed eldest son. And of course, our Kay Adams, Furful Evergreen. An elf in a sea of demons, standing out like a sore thumb in the best way possible. Perfect for the outsider who captures Michael's heart. The rest of the cast? Let's just say, I outdid myself. Each one chosen with the precision of a demonic ritual, and about the same level of risk. Now, with our band of misfits assembled, it was time for the next challenge, finding spots in our hellish landscape that could pass for my taste. After 3 days of scouting that felt more like a demonic scavenger hunt, we finally nailed down our locations. First up, we've got the neighborhood of Gloomstone. Similar to Brooklyn, but with a hellish twist. Narrow streets packed tighter than sardines in a can, brownstone buildings that have seen better millennia, and demons of all shapes and sizes going about their business. The air's thick with the scent of brimstone and questionable street food. It's perfect for our gritty street scenes. Then there's the Crimson Quarter. This is our little Italy stand-in, but trust me, it's anything but little. It's the stomping ground of the Morningstar royal family, yeah, my family. But hey, if we're going for authenticity in showing a crime family's turf, might as well use the real deal, right? For our industrial scenes, we've got the Abyssal Docks. It's part of Gloomstone, but it's got its own charm, if by charm you mean rusted cranes, murky waters, and the constant feeling that you might get shoved into said murky waters if you look at someone wrong. It's perfect for those tense waterfront meetings. But the real gem? That's the Great Neck. It's our Long Island equivalent, about 17 kilometers from Gloomstone. Now, this place is a goldmine for us, and not just because it's seen better days. There's this estate we can rent for cheap, belongs to some fallen noble family. The whole Great Neck area is like stepping back in time. While the rest of Furlan City is racing towards the future, this place is stuck in the past. Houses look like they haven't been updated in a century, which is exactly what we need. And in Infernal Heights? Oh boy, we've hit the motherlode. Old villas and manors that look like they're one stiff breeze away from collapsing. They're practically begging to be used as a mob family headquarters. As we wrapped up our location scouting, I couldn't help but grin. Guys, I said, looking around at my ragtag team, I think we just found our perfect backdrop for the Demonfather's world. George scratched his head. Boss, how are we going to make this look like the setting from your script? It's looking like a backward place. I laughed. George, my friend, that's the beauty of it. We're not trying to recreate some modern city. We're building our own world. The Demonfather will be set in a fictional city that exists only in our twisted imaginations. Rocky nodded approvingly. Kid's got a point. It's not about copying something that doesn't exist here. It's about capturing the feel of a crime-ridden city. Correct, I chimed in. We're going to blend these demonic locations with the vibe of a classic mob story. It'll be something no one's ever seen before. As we headed back to our warehouse-turned-studio, my mind was racing with possibilities. We had our cast, we had our locations. Now all we needed was to actually make the damn movie. Alright, guys, I announced, feeling that familiar surge of excitement. Tomorrow, we start turning this crazy dream into reality. We're going to create a whole new world on film. The cheer that went up could have woken the dead. And in this city, it probably did. The next day dawned, and our little warehouse was buzzing like a hive of caffeinated bees. We'd cobbled together our filming equipment, and by some miracle, or perhaps demonic intervention, it was all holding together. George and I had outdone ourselves, really. We'd managed to rig up working mics and lighting setups that looked only slightly like they might spontaneously combust. But the real pride and joy? Our cameras. While juggling auditions and prep work, George and I had somehow found the time to build 2 more color cameras. They weren't pretty, mind you, they looked like something you'd find if you crossed a junkyard with a mad scientist's lab, but they worked. Our crew of fresh-faced graduates was stepping up too. Despite their lack of experience, they were taking charge, coordinating everything from shot setups to coffee runs with surprising efficiency. Maybe there was something to be said for youthful enthusiasm after all. Now, about the story of the Demonfather itself. I'd made some adjustments. Using real demon clan names seemed like a fast track to getting us all turned into Hellhound Chow. Exiled prince or not, I wasn't about to paint a target on our backs. Our first shooting location was the Shadow Estate, perched at the top of Infernal Heights, like a brooding vulture. The place had seen better days, probably about a century ago, but we didn't have the budget for a full renovation. Enter Furful, our unexpected savior. With a wave of her hand and some elven magic, she'd transformed the dusty old manor into something that actually looked habitable. In just an hour, no less. I made a mental note to give her a raise, once we actually started making money. Just outside the manor, we'd set up what could generously be called tents if you squinted and had a vivid imagination. Inside these flimsy excuses for shelter, our makeshift makeup team was working their magic on the cast. When Rocky emerged from his tent, I had to do a double take. The transformation was, well, impressive didn't quite cover it. He looked every inch the Don Vito Corleone we needed if Vito had been a demon, that is. Rocky's red, reptilian eyes and vampire-like teeth added an otherworldly touch to the character. It wasn't surprising, really. Rocky was a vampire demon, after all. No horns or tail or scales for him, just pale skin that made him look like he'd never seen the sun. Rocky caught my eye and sauntered over, his walk a perfect blend of elderly caution and quiet power. It was clear he'd been practicing. "What do you think, my friend?" he asked, his voice a gravelly whisper that sent shivers down my spine. "Do I look the part?" I couldn't help but chuckle. "Rocky, old pal, you've got a talent for this acting gig." And it was true. Sure, I'd tweaked the role a bit to fit Rocky's natural personality, but the essence of the Don was still there. It was like the character had been waiting inside Rocky all along, just needing an excuse to come out. The rest of the cast emerged from their tents, each one a perfect blend of demonic features and mob style. "All right, guys," I called out, clapping my hands to get everyone's attention. "This is it. The beginning of our film. First scene is in Don Vito's study. Let's make it happen." As we all filed into the manor, I couldn't help but feel a mix of nerves and exhilaration. I took one last look around at my motley crew and cast all dressed up and ready to play make-believe. "Quiet on set," I called out, trying to sound like I knew what I was doing. And, action. The moment I called action, it was like flipping a switch. The crew sprang into motion, cameras rolling, and our actors transformed before my eyes. Richard, a middle-aged demon we'd snagged for the role of Amerigo Bonacera, took center stage. I've kept the original family names from The Godfather, no sense messing with perfection, but I'd taken some creative liberties with the locations. Gloomstone was now Manhattan, Crimson Quarter became Little Underworld, and Abyssal Docks? Meet Brooklyn Docks. Sure, these places didn't exist in our world, but that was the beauty of fiction, right? Richard launched into his monologue, his voice dripping with emotion. "I believe in Empirica. Empirica has made my fortune. And I raised my daughter in Empirican fashion. I gave her freedom, but I taught her to never dishonor the family. She found a boyfriend. Not a demon." As he continued, describing his daughter's abuse, I could almost feel the anger radiating off him. "Now she will never be beautiful again," he finished, his voice barely above a whisper. I glanced over at Rocky, who was looking a bit lost. He caught my eye, silently pleading for help. I gave him an encouraging nod, mouthing "remember our rehearsals." It was all I could do not to cross my fingers and pray to whatever demon gods were listening. Rocky seemed to steel himself, then subtly nodded back. He gestured to Charles, our sonny, to bring Bonacera a drink. The movement was smooth, natural, every inch the Don we needed him to be. "Sorry," Richard mumbled, accepting the drink with shaking hands. He took a sip, his eyes never leaving Rocky's face. I had to bite my lip to keep from grinning. Richard was nailing it. It was a shame he'd never landed a big role before. The guy had talent. As the scene continued, I felt a mixture of pride and disbelief. We were actually doing it. Making a movie. A demon mob movie, sure, but a movie nonetheless. "Cut," I called out, once the scene wrapped. That was great, guys. Really great." The tension in the room broke, replaced by grins and excited chatter. Rocky let out a breath I think he'd been holding since we started rolling. "How'd I do, kid?" he asked, his usual gruff demeanor returning now that he was out of character. I clapped him on the shoulder. "Rocky, my friend, I think you just became a star." As we set up for the next shot, I couldn't help but feel a surge of optimism. We had a long way to go, sure, but if this first scene was any indication, we might just pull this crazy scheme off. Watch out, Demon World. The Demonfather is coming, and he's bringing a whole new kind of family business with him. Oh, right. I should probably mention that Empirica is the big kahuna of human nations in our world. Anyway, back to our little filming. Richard was really getting into his groove now. His voice trembled with barely contained rage as he continued, I reported to the police, like a good Empirican. These two boys were brought to trial. The judge sentenced them to 3 years in prison. Suspended sentence. Suspended sentence. They went free that very day. His face contorted with disgust. I stood there like a fool. And those two bastards. They smiled at me. Then I said to my wife, for justice, we must go to the Corleone. I held my breath as Rocky's cue approached. This was the moment of truth. Rocky shifted in his chair, his hand reaching out to pet the demon cat in his lap. I had to stifle a chuckle as if I'd forget the cat. That furball was practically a supporting character in its own right. Why did you go to the police? Why didn't you come to me first? Rocky rumbled, his voice low and gravelly, every inch the Don we needed him to be. I felt my heart soar. Rocky was nailing it. The hesitation from earlier was gone, replaced by a quiet confidence that practically oozed power. The scene continued, each line delivered with a precision that made me want to pinch myself. Was this really happening? Were we actually pulling this off? As Richard delivered his final plea and Rocky gave his measured response, I could barely contain my excitement. When the last line was delivered, I waited a beat, savoring the moment before calling out, cut. The room erupted into a flurry of movement and chatter. Rocky slumped in his chair, the weight of the dawn falling away from his shoulders. Richard wiped his brow, looking both exhausted and exhilarated. After wrapping up the opening scene, we all huddled around the projector to review our handiwork. I couldn't help but chuckle at Rocky's rare display of embarrassment as he watched himself on screen. That was a very good start for your career as an actor, I said, nudging him with my elbow. Rocky raised an eyebrow. Career? Didn't you dream of being an actor when you were young? I asked, genuinely curious. A wistful look crossed Rocky's face. Hee, well, if this film of yours receives a great response, maybe my dream will be achieved after all. The crew and I exchanged smiles. Who knew our gruff old ticket-taker had such hidden depths? Rocky's POV, after the review session with the young Prince ex-Prince Arthur, we dove right back into filming. Next up, the wedding scenes. We set up shop just outside the manor, the air buzzing with nervous energy. I found myself adjusting my tie for the 100th time, trying to channel the gravitas of Don Vito. The actress playing Connie, my character's daughter, was a succubus demon. But if you ask me, she looked about as succubus-like as a potato. Average as they come. I couldn't help but wonder what Arthur saw in her, but hey, I'm just the actor, not the casting director. As we got into position for the family photo, I cleared my throat and asked the photographer, really just one of our crew pulling double duty, where's Michael? The guy just shook his head, right on cue. I gotta hand it to our ragtag team, they were giving it their all. The production 3 cobbled together color cameras were whirring away, capturing the scene from different angles. The cast was in full swing, and our crew was running around like caffeinated imps, juggling their regular jobs with their roles as extras. And there was Arthur, decked out in his Michael soldier suit, somehow managing to direct and observe while getting ready for his own scene. The kid looked like he was in 7 places at once, barking orders 1 minute and adjusting someone's costume the next. Arthur's POV, directing is no joke, let me tell you. We'd made some decent progress on the wedding scenes, but man, was I feeling it. With our skeleton crew and bargain bin equipment, every shot felt like a small miracle. When it came time for my scene as Michael, I did my best to channel that wide-eyed, optimistic Empirican vibe. You know, the kind of guy who still believes in the system and all that jazz. Now, I should probably explain something about Empirica. In our real world, it's this powerful human nation that wouldn't give demons the time of day. But in my Demonfather universe? It's a melting pot of races, demons, elves, dwarves, all living together in somewhat harmony. Hey, it's my film, I'll world build how I want, thank you very much. Surprisingly, slipping into Michael's shoes wasn't as tough as I thought it'd be. Maybe it's because we've got more in common than I'd like to admit. Both youngest sons, both black sheep of the family, though I doubt Michael ever got exiled for trying to make a movie. Then again, stranger things have happened. One of the best parts? Getting to show off Furful to the family. As an elf, she stood out like a sore thumb in our sea of demons and dwarves. But that was the point, wasn't it? Kay Adams, the outsider, the glimpse of a different world. During one take, I caught Furful eyeing Kyle, our Luca Brasi. The big lug was off to the side, muttering to himself, on the wedding day of your daughter. Over and over. Method acting at its finest, folks. I leaned in close to Furful, playing up Michael's protective side. He's a very scary guy, I stage whispered. Furful, ever the professional, didn't miss a beat. Well, who is he? What's his name? She asked, her voice tinged with curiosity and a hint of fear. We kept at it, take after take, until finally, mercifully, we wrapped the wedding scenes. As I called cut, for the last time, I felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. We'd done it. It wasn't perfect, but by the horns of the devil, we'd actually done it. Days blurred together as we kept filming, inching forward one scene at a time. Today's challenge? Tom Hagen's visit to the big shot director's mansion to get Johnny Fontaine cast. Now, to really sell the director's arrogance, we needed someone who could ooze entitlement. Enter our secret weapon, a human actor. Yeah, you heard that right. We snagged him for cheap, turns out even in the human world, he couldn't catch a break. Their loss, our gain. I should probably explain something here. Humans living in the demon world? Not as rare as you'd think. They've even got their own little enclave scattered around. And boy, do they act like they own the place. To be fair, their swagger isn't entirely misplaced. Humans have spread across 2 whole continents, Empirica and Evros. Meanwhile, us demons are packed into Anatolia. Sure, we've got a decent chunk of land, but when it comes to population, we're outnumbered, big time. It's a numbers game, really. Demon birth rates are lower than an imp's IQ, and the projections aren't looking great. Give it a few more years, and we might be looking at a serious demon shortage. As I watched our human actor strut onto set, oozing that perfect blend of charm and condescension, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of something. Envy? Worry? Who knows? But it was a stark reminder of the changing tides in our world. All right, people. I called out, pushing those thoughts aside. We'll start filming at any moment now. Johnny Devilkin, you ready to grovel? Johnny, our Tom Hagen, gave me a thumbs up. Ready to beg like my hellhound's life depends on it, boss. I grinned. Perfect. And you, Mr. Big Shot Director? I turned to our human actor. Remember, you're not just playing a role. You're representing your entire species' superiority complex. The guy actually puffed up his chest at that. Method acting at its finest. All right, guys, I said, settling into my director's chair, slightly less wobbly crate. 3, 2, 1. And, action. The scene unfolded like a demonic dance. Johnny, our Tom Hagen, laid on the charm thick as molasses, trying to convince Mr. Big Shot Director to cast Johnny Fontaine. I had to hand it to Johnny, for a demon, he played a pretty convincing demon lawyer. But the real showstopper? That came in the next scene. Our human actor, sprawled across his bed, clutching a bloody unicorn head like it was his firstborn. Ah. It was grotesque, it was over the top, it was perfect. Cut. I called out, trying not to grin like a maniac. That was surprisingly good. Our human actor sat up, still cradling the prop unicorn head. Surprisingly, he echoed, sounding mildly offended. I shrugged. Hey, I calls M like I sees M. Now put down sparkles and let's review the footage. We were all set to review the scene when our human actor decided to pull a diva move. He swaggered off, not even bothering to watch his performance. Talk about confidence. Aren't you gonna watch? I called after him. He tossed a dismissive wave over his shoulder. Don't need to, darling. I know I nailed it. I couldn't help but smirk. His ego might be the size of the Eden continent, largest continent of this world, but it worked in our favor. The guy had no clue we were shooting in color. Sometimes, ignorance really is bliss for us, anyway. As the scene played out, I had to admit his scream was something else. It sent shivers down my spine, and I'm a demon for hell's sake. In my humble, possibly biased opinion, it even outdid the original scene from my previous life. The terror in his eyes? Oscar-worthy, if I do say so myself. Well, I announced to the remaining crew, I think we've got ourselves a keeper. It was late at night, long after everyone had gone home. I found myself alone in the studio. The quiet was almost eerie after the constant chaos of filming. I queued up the footage we'd shot so far, settling in for a private viewing party. As Rocky's gravelly voice filled the room, "I'll make him an offer he can't refuse," I felt goosebumps rise on my arms. It was surreal, hearing those iconic words in our demon-infested version of the classic. Watching the scenes unfold, a wild idea started to take shape. We needed music, a theme that could capture the essence of our demon mob epic. And who better to compose it than yours truly? Okay, so maybe I wasn't exactly a musical prodigy in this life or my last. But I remembered enough of the Godfather theme to replicate it. All I needed was a group of musicians crazy enough to bring my half-baked ideas to life. I grabbed a piece of paper, scribbling down notes and humming to myself. It was probably a good thing no one was around to hear my tone-deaf attempts at composition. The next day, I roped in my crew to help track down a music group willing to bring my demonic symphony to life. And by willing, I mean cheap enough that we could afford them without selling our souls. Well, what's left of our souls, anyway? "Alright, folks," I announced, waving my scribbled composition like a battle flag. "We need musicians. Preferably ones who won't laugh us out of the room when they see this." George squinted at my chicken scratch. "Boss, are you sure that's music and not a summoning spell gone wrong?" I chose to ignore that. "Look, we're not aiming for the Demon Philharmonic here. Just find me a group that can play more than 2 notes without setting something on fire." As the crew scattered to scour the underbelly of Furland City's music scene, I couldn't help but wince at our financial situation. We'd already burned through $29,000 on location rentals, filming permits, and extras for scenes like the wedding. And that's not even counting the $40,000 we'd dropped on feeding and paying our ragtag cast and crew. I glanced at our dwindling funds. Out of our original $200K, we were down to $131,000. It was like watching sand slip through an hourglass, if the sand was money and the hourglass was our increasingly precarious budget. Thank hell I'd managed to sweet-talk the crew into taking a cut of the box office instead of their full salary. Of course, that was assuming we'd have a box office to cut. But hey, optimism is free, right? "At least they're not complaining," I muttered to myself, watching the crew bustling around. They seemed content with the 3 square meals a day and the promise of experience. Part of me felt guilty, but another part, the part that was quickly learning the cutthroat nature of demon show business, knew this was how dreams got made. On empty stomachs and even emptier wallets. Rocky sidled up to me, eyeing the budget sheet I was scowling at. "You know, kid, in my day, we didn't need fancy music or color cameras to tell a story." I raised an eyebrow. "In your day, was that before or after the invention of fire?" He chuckled, a sound like gravel in a blender. "All I'm saying is, don't lose sight of what's important. The story, the performances. That's what people will remember." I nodded, feeling a mix of gratitude and determination. "Thanks, Rocky. But trust me, once they hear this theme, they'll never forget the Demonfather." As if on cue, George burst back into the studio, out of breath and grinning like he'd just won the demon lottery. "Boss, you're not gonna believe this, but I found a group of Banshee sisters who owe me a favor. They're willing to do it for free." I showed off my music composition sheet. I blinked. "Banshees?" George nodded enthusiastically. "Yep. They've been trying to break into the music scene for ages. Figure this is their big break." I looked down at my composition, then back at George's eager face. "What the hell, right?" "Book 'em," I said, grinning despite myself. "Let's see if they can sing or play instruments." George chuckled, puffing up with pride. "Oh, they definitely can. I've seen them play before. Their fee's usually pretty steep, but when I mentioned it was for a movie soundtrack and called in that favor they owed me, they agreed to do it for free." I couldn't help but laugh. "Oh, I guess the idiot ones are always favored by luck," I quipped, clearly referring to George's unexpected stroke of good fortune. but George, bless his heart, completely missed the jab. "Boss Arthur, don't look down on yourself like that. You're just lucky to have me, but you're not an idiot." The crew and Rocky, who'd been eavesdropping, burst into laughter. Talk about a backfire. I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. "Well, just go and call the Banshee sisters." George nodded and scurried off, still beaming with misplaced pride. Before long, our studio was invaded by the Banshee sisters. They swept in like a storm, all flowing dark hair and piercing eyes, lugging instruments that looked like they'd been salvaged from a Gothic orchestra's garage sale. Despite being demons, they were human-like, save for their slightly blue-tinged skin and the fact that their hair seemed to move of its own accord. Each sister was breathtakingly beautiful in a way that made you wonder if you'd survive getting close enough for a better look. "Ladies," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt, "welcome to Hellfire Studios. Ready to make some music soundtrack for my movie?" The eldest sister, or at least the one who radiated the most "don't mess with me" energy, stepped forward. "We hear you have a composition for us?" I handed over my scribbled mess of a score, trying not to wince as she scrutinized it. "It's a work in progress," I mumbled. To my surprise, her eyes lit up. This is intriguing. Sisters, positions." What happened next can only be described as musical magic. The Banshees took their places, instruments at the ready. As they began to play, the studio filled with a sound that was hauntingly familiar yet utterly unique. The melody of the Godfather theme emerged, but it was transformed. The Banshees' voices provided an otherworldly choir, their instruments adding layers of depth I hadn't even imagined. It was beautiful, it was terrifying, it was perfect. As the last note faded, I realized I'd been holding my breath. "That was, wow," I managed, eloquent as ever. The lead sister smiled, a sight both thrilling and slightly terrifying. "We made some slight adjustments. Hope you don't mind." I shook my head, still in awe. "Mind? That was incredible. You just gave our movie its soul." As the crew erupted in applause and the Banshees preened, I caught Rocky's eye. He gave me a subtle nod, a rare smile playing at his lips. I grinned back. We'd done it. We had our cast, our footage, and now, a soundtrack that could raise the dead or at least give them a good reason to dance elegantly. A week into filming, and we'd become a regular circus act in Furlan City. The Crimson Quarter locals eyed us like we were some new species of demon they couldn't quite figure out. But hey, at least our relative obscurity worked in our favor. We managed to shoot the scene where Don Vito buys oranges and narrowly escapes an assassination attempt without causing a full-blown panic. Our prop gun, lovingly crafted by yours truly and George, was a masterpiece of demon engineering. It fired with a bang that could wake the dead and spat ketchup with enough force to make any vampire drool. Sure, we had a permit, but I still half expected the demon cops to show up and arrest us all for disturbing the peace. Or worse, crimes against produce. 2 days later. We bounced from location to location like a demonic roadshow. One minute we're filming Michael and Kay's shopping trip turned newspaper nightmare, the next we're setting up in a rented restaurant in Gloomstone for the big Salazzo McCluskey scene. I was giving a pep talk to our Salazzo, an imp demon who, thankfully, wasn't actually imp-sized, and McCluskey, a portly fiend demon who looked like he ate donuts by the dozen. Perfect casting, if I do say so myself. But even as I tried to focus on the scene, I couldn't help but overhear the not-so-subtle whispers from the restaurant's actual patrons. "Is that the exiled young prince?" "Yeah. Looks like they're filming." "Heh. Heard he got disowned cause of this picture company nonsense." "Shoo. He might hear you." "Who cares? He's not a prince anymore." I gritted my teeth, trying to ignore the judgmental muttering. Instead, I approached the restaurant owner, plastering on my best "I'm not bothered" smile. "We're about to start filming. When can we expect your customers to clear out so we can get to work?" The owner barely glanced at me. "Just wait a few minutes. Don't be so impatient." I retreated to my crew, feeling the sting of his indifference. We paid good money to rent this place, but clearly, my fallen status meant we were now second-class citizens in the demon world. Minutes ticked by like hours. The owner was in no hurry to usher out his paying customers, probably enjoying making us wait. But finally, mercifully, the last patron left, and our extras filed in to fill the space. As I called the actors to their places, I took a deep breath, pushing down the frustration and hurt. "All right, people," I called out, injecting as much enthusiasm into my voice as I could muster. "Let's make it quick. Places, everyone." The extras settled into their seats, the air thick with anticipation. I held up my hand, fingers splayed, and began the countdown. 3, 2, 1. Action. I called out, feeling the familiar shift as I slipped into Michael's skin. Becoming Michael was getting easier each time, like putting on a well-worn coat. Today, though, it felt almost too easy. The recent sting of discrimination, the sideways glances, the whispered judgments, they all fed into Michael's complicated emotional state. Who knew being a fallen prince would be such great method-acting fodder? As the camera rolled, I greeted Sollozzo and McCluskey, shaking their hands with just the right amount of hesitation. Michael was here to discuss the recent tensions, but the undercurrent of danger was palpable. I took my seat, letting a hint of nervousness flicker across my face. Sollozzo and McCluskey responded perfectly, their expressions a mix of condescension and underestimation. They looked at Michael, at me, like I was a kid playing in the big leagues. The dialogue flowed, tension building with each exchange. Then came my cue to excuse myself to the bathroom. McCluskey, ever the suspicious cop, gave me a pat-down that was just a touch too aggressive. I bit back a smile. Our fiend demon was really getting into character. Once in the bathroom set, I called a quick cut to reset for the gun retrieval scene. This was where things got interesting. I'd given specific instructions to Ryan, our props master, not to tell me where he'd hidden the gun. "Make it authentic," I'd told him. "I want to really look like I'm searching." As the camera started rolling again, I let Michael's nervousness take over. My hand shook slightly as I searched, eyes darting around the bathroom. Where was it? Behind the toilet? Under the sink? The seconds ticked by, and I could practically feel the tension from the crew. We couldn't film this forever. Just as I was about to break character and ask for help, my fingers brushed against something cool and metallic. Bingo. I pulled out the gun, a mix of relief and dread washing over me, over Michael. This was it. The point of no return. I slipped the gun into my pocket and took a deep breath. After a quick reset, we dove into the heart of the scene. Sollozzo and McCluskey were deep in conversation, occasionally tossing words my way like scraps to a dog. I'd made it clear to our cameraman to keep the focus on my face. This was my moment of transformation, and I wanted every flicker of emotion captured. I let the tension build in my body, my face a carefully crafted mask of nervous determination. The weight of the gun in my pocket felt like it was pulling me down, urging me towards the point of no return. Sollozzo turned to me, spouting some line about guarantees. I mumbled a response, barely hearing my own words. The world had narrowed down to this moment, this decision. Then, with a surge of resolve that surprised even me, my hand closed around the gun. In one fluid motion, I yanked it out and aimed at Sollozzo's forehead. Bang! The ketchup explosion was almost comical, but the look of shock on Sollozzo's face was Oscar-worthy. Before McCluskey could even process what was happening, I swung the gun towards him. Bang! Another ketchup casualty. Our fiend demon really sold it, his eyes going wide before he slumped forward, a streak of red across his expansive forehead. The extras erupted into chaos, screaming and scrambling for the exits. In the midst of it all, I stood there, gun still raised, trying to look both terrified and determined. I glanced down at my handiwork, then around the room, before making my hurried exit. As I burst out of the restaurant, I was greeted by a small crowd of curious demons who'd gathered to watch our little production. For a moment, the line between Arthur and Michael blurred. Were they looking at the exiled prince or the newly minted killer? Cut! I shouted, my voice a mix of exhilaration and relief. Just like that, the spell was broken. The tension drained from my body, replaced by a giddy sense of accomplishment. I couldn't help but grin. Nailed it. That was intense, Rocky rumbled, appearing at my side. For a second there, I almost believed you'd actually offed those two. I laughed, running a hand through my hair. What can I say? I've got some pent-up aggression to work out. As the crew bustled around, resetting the scene and wiping down our victims, I caught sight of our impromptu audience. They were muttering among themselves, looking at us with curiosity. "Looks like we might be winning some folks over," George said, following my gaze. I nodded, feeling a spark of hope. Maybe. Or maybe they're just wondering why we're wasting perfectly good ketchup. As usual, we huddled around our janky projector to review the day's work. The restaurant scene flickered to life, and I found myself leaning forward, scrutinizing every frame. It was good, damn good, if I do say so myself, but not perfect. A few shots needed touching up, but nothing we couldn't handle with a quick reshoot. "Alright," I announced, clapping my hands to get everyone's attention. "We've got a couple of pickups to do, then we're out of here. Let's make it snappy. I hear there's a sale on ketchup down at the Hellmart, and we're running low." The crew chuckled, already moving to reset the scene. It never ceased to amaze me how quickly they could transform from a bunch of misfits into a well-oiled machine. We knocked out the reshoots in record time, and before I knew it, we were wrapping up for the day. As the crew filed out, chattering about plans for the evening, I found myself alone in the studio once again. The silence was almost deafening after the constant buzz of filming. I sighed, looking around at the empty space that had become both my workplace and my home. Talk about living the dream, huh? But there was no time for self-pity. I had work to do. I settled in at my makeshift editing station, surrounded by reels of film and the constant whir of our ancient film splicer. This had become my nightly ritual over the past week, splicing film strips, syncing up the Banshee Sisters' haunting soundtrack, trying to piece together our cinematic puzzle. The Banshees' music drifted through the studio as I synced it to the visuals. Their otherworldly melodies sent shivers down my spine, even after hearing them 100 times. It was perfect, hauntingly beautiful, and just the right amount of unsettling. Just like our movie. Hours ticked by, marked only by the rhythmic snip of the splicer and the occasional curse when I messed up a cut. My eyes burned, my back ached, but I couldn't stop. This wasn't just busy work, this was creation in its purest form. As the first rays of dawn began to peek through the grimy studio windows, I sat back, rubbing my bleary eyes. The editing table was a mess of film strips and discarded cuts, but the reel in front of me, that was magic. I threaded it through the projector with trembling hands, holding my breath as the image flickered to life on the wall. There it was, rough and unpolished, but undeniably alive. Our movie. Our Demonfather. As I watched Michael's transformation play out, backed by the haunting strains of the Banshee Sisters, I felt a lump form in my throat. We were doing it. Actually doing it. I slumped back in my chair, exhaustion and exhilaration warring for dominance. There was still so much to do, so many scenes to shoot and edit. But in that moment, watching our creation come to life in the pale light of dawn, I knew it was all worth it. Days blurred together in a haze of film reels and ketchup blood. I decided to postpone shooting Michael's exile scenes, focusing instead on the parts where I could stay behind the camera. Today's big scene? Sonny's dramatic demise at the toll booth. We'd set up shop at Horns Field, a patch of land in Great Neck that happened to have a conveniently placed toll booth. As I surveyed our makeshift set, I couldn't help but chuckle at the sight of Charles Flirt living up to his name. Our Sonny was currently engaged in what I can only describe as a tragically unsuccessful attempt to woo one of our crew members. The poor demoness looked like she was trying to decide between laughter and a restraining order. "Charles," I called out, trying to keep the amusement out of my voice. "We're about to film." The scale demon turned, his face a picture of embarrassed chagrin. "Oh, okay," he called back, giving the demoness one last wink before sauntering over. I shook my head, grinning. "You know, Charles, you're supposed to save the charm for on camera." He shrugged, scales glinting in the sunlight. "Can't help it, boss. It's in my blood." "Yeah, well, try to keep it in your pants for the next few hours, alright? We've got a death scene to film." As the crew bustled around, setting up cameras and rigging our makeshift special effects, I couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. We'd come a long way from our janky warehouse beginnings. Take our car, for instance. On paper, it was a piece of junk from the failing demon company called Fire of Hell. But with a little demonic ingenuity, and a lot of elbow grease, George and I had transformed it into something that could almost pass for elegant. At least from a distance. And with squinted eyes. "Alright, people," I called out, clapping my hands to get everyone's attention. places, everyone. Charles, you ready to meet your maker? Charles grinned, sliding into the driver's seat of our refurbished chariot. Born ready, boss. Just make sure the ketchup's warm this time, yeah? That cold stuff gives me the creeps. I laughed, shaking my head as I made my way behind the camera. No promises, superstar. Alright, let's make a best scene. And, action. The scene unfolded like a well-orchestrated dance of chaos. Charles, fully in sunny mode, pulled up to the toll booth, his face a perfect mask of casual annoyance. Our extra, playing the toll booth operator, went through the motions of collecting the fare. I held my breath, willing everything to go smoothly. We couldn't afford a do-over on this one, both literally and figuratively. The special effects for this scene had cost us an arm and a leg, thankfully not literally. Suddenly, Charles's expression shifted, a flicker of realization crossing his face. Right on cue, the toll booth operator ducked out of sight, and our suit-clad demon emerged, brandishing a Tommy gun that looked surprisingly realistic thanks to some clever runic enhancements. Charles's eyes widened in genuine surprise, whether it was good acting or actual shock at how real everything looked, I couldn't tell. But it worked. As he scrambled to get out of the car, all hell broke loose. The fake windows, because there was no way we were destroying the actual car, it was probably worth more than our entire production at this point, shattered in a shower of safety glass and magic sparks. I silently cheered Charles on as he stumbled out of the vehicle. This was it, the moment of truth. Our ambushers emerged from their hiding spots, unleashing a barrage of magical bullets. Charles put on a performance that would make any stunt coordinator proud. He jerked and twisted with each imaginary impact, his face a mask of shock and pain. As he finally crumpled to the ground, continuing to twitch and jerk as the bullets kept coming, I had to remind myself to breathe. It was just acting, after all. Our attackers, seemingly satisfied that Sonny was well and truly deader than dead, made their hasty exit. Right on cue, another car pulled up, and our Corleone family man stepped out, his face a perfect picture of stunned disbelief as he took in the scene. I gestured frantically to our cameraman, making sure he captured both Charles's prone form and the distant figure of the family man. This was the shot that would tie it all together, the moment that would break the audience's hearts. As the last beats of the scene played out, I finally allowed myself to relax. We'd done it. Against all odds, we'd pulled off one of the most complex and crucial scenes in the entire film. Cut. I called out, my voice a mix of relief and exhilaration. The set erupted into cheers and applause. Charles, still lying on the ground, raised a triumphant fist in the air, before groaning dramatically. Someone want to help me up, he called out. I think I'm actually dead this time. As the crew rushed to assist our fallen star and begin the cleanup process, I couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. We'd taken a shoestring budget, a bunch of misfits, and a whole lot of determination, and turned it into something, well, something pretty damn impressive. Not bad, kid, Rocky rumbled, appearing at my side. For a minute there, I almost believed we were watching a real hit go down. I grinned, still riding the high of a successful shoot. Thanks, Rocky. Let's just hope the audience feels the same way. We began to pack up, ready to film the next scenes. As usual, we huddled around our janky projector to review the day's work. The restaurant scene flickered to life, and I found myself leaning forward, scrutinizing every frame. It was good, damn good, if I do say so myself, but not perfect. A few shots needed touching up, but nothing we couldn't handle with a quick reshoot. Alright, I announced, clapping my hands to get everyone's attention. We've got a couple of pickups to do, then we're out of here. Let's make it snappy. I hear there's a sale on ketchup down at the Hellmart, and we're running low. The crew chuckled, already moving to reset the scene. It never ceased to amaze me how quickly they could transform from a bunch of misfits into a well-oiled machine. We knocked out the reshoots in record time, and before I knew it, we were wrapping up for the day. As the crew filed out, chattering about plans for the evening, I found myself alone in the studio once again. The silence was almost deafening after the constant buzz of filming. I sighed, looking around at the empty space that had become both my workplace and my home. Talk about living the dream, huh? But there was no time for self-pity. I had work to do. I settled in at my makeshift editing station, surrounded by reels of film and the constant whir of our ancient film splicer. This had become my nightly ritual over the past week, splicing film strips, syncing up the Banshee Sisters' haunting soundtrack, trying to piece together our cinematic puzzle. The Banshee's music drifted through the studio as I synced it to the visuals. Their otherworldly melodies sent shivers down my spine, even after hearing them 100 times. It was perfect, hauntingly beautiful, and just the right amount of unsettling. Just like our movie. Hours ticked by, marked only by the rhythmic snip of the splicer and the occasional curse when I messed up a cut. My eyes burned, my back ached, but I couldn't stop. This wasn't just busy work, this was creation in its purest form. As the first rays of dawn began to peek through the grimy studio windows, I sat back, rubbing my bleary eyes. The editing table was a mess of film strips and discarded cuts, but the reel in front of me, that was magic. I threaded it through the projector with trembling hands, holding my breath as the image flickered to life on the wall. There it was, rough and unpolished, but undeniably alive. Our movie. Our Demonfather. As I watched Michael's transformation play out, backed by the haunting strains of the Banshee sisters, I felt a lump form in my throat. We were doing it. Actually doing it. I slumped back in my chair, exhaustion and exhilaration warring for dominance. There was still so much to do, so many scenes to shoot and edit. But in that moment, watching our creation come to life in the pale light of dawn, I knew it was all worth it. Days blurred together in a haze of film reels and ketchup blood. I decided to postpone shooting Michael's exile scenes, focusing instead on the parts where I could stay behind the camera. Today's big scene? Sonny's dramatic demise at the toll booth. We'd set up shop at Horns Field, a patch of land in Great Neck that happened to have a conveniently placed toll booth. As I surveyed our makeshift set, I couldn't help but chuckle at the sight of Charles Flirt living up to his name. Our Sonny was currently engaged in what I can only describe as a tragically unsuccessful attempt to woo one of our crew members. The poor demoness looked like she was trying to decide between laughter and a restraining order. "Charles," I called out, trying to keep the amusement out of my voice. "We're about to film." The scale demon turned, his face a picture of embarrassed chagrin. "Oh, okay," he called back, giving the demoness one last wink before sauntering over. I shook my head, grinning. "You know, Charles, you're supposed to save the charm for on camera." He shrugged, scales glinting in the sunlight. "Can't help it, boss. It's in my blood." "Yeah, well, try to keep it in your pants for the next few hours, alright? We've got a death scene to film." As the crew bustled around, setting up cameras and rigging our makeshift special effects, I couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. We'd come a long way from our janky warehouse beginnings. Take our car, for instance. On paper, it was a piece of junk from the failing demon company called Fire of Hell. But with a little demonic ingenuity, and a lot of elbow grease, George and I had transformed it into something that could almost pass for elegant. At least from a distance. And with squinted eyes. "Alright, people," I called out, clapping my hands to get everyone's attention. "Places, everyone. Charles, you ready to meet your maker?" Charles grinned, sliding into the driver's seat of our refurbished chariot. "Born ready, boss. Just make sure the ketchup's warm this time, yeah? That cold stuff gives me the creeps." I laughed, shaking my head as I made my way behind the camera. "No promises, superstar." "Alright, let's make a best scene." And, action. The scene unfolded like a well-orchestrated dance of chaos. Charles, fully in Sonny mode, pulled up to the toll booth, his face a perfect mask of casual annoyance. Our extra, playing the toll booth operator, went through the motions of collecting the fare. I held my breath, willing everything to go smoothly. We couldn't afford a do-over on this one, both literally and figuratively. The special effects for this scene had cost us an arm and a leg, thankfully not literally. Suddenly, Charles's expression shifted, a flicker of realization crossing his face. Right on cue, the toll booth operator ducked out of sight, and our suit-clad demon emerged, brandishing a Tommy gun that looked surprisingly realistic thanks to some clever runic enhancements. Charles's eyes widened in genuine surprise, whether it was good acting or actual shock at how real everything looked, I couldn't tell. But it worked. As he scrambled to get out of the car, all hell broke loose. The fake windows, because there was no way we were destroying the actual car, it was probably worth more than our entire production at this point, shattered in a shower of safety glass and magic sparks. I silently cheered Charles on as he stumbled out of the vehicle. This was it, the moment of truth. Our ambushers emerged from their hiding spots, unleashing a barrage of magical bullets. Charles put on a performance that would make any stunt coordinator proud. He jerked and twisted with each imaginary impact, his face a mask of shock and pain. As he finally crumpled to the ground, continuing to twitch and jerk as the bullets kept coming, I had to remind myself to breathe. It was just acting, after all. Our attackers, seemingly satisfied that Sonny was well and truly deader than dead, made their hasty exit. Right on cue, another car pulled up, and our Corleone family man stepped out, his face a perfect picture of stunned disbelief as he took in the scene. I gestured frantically to our cameraman, making sure he captured both Charles's prone form and the distant figure of the family man. This was the shot that would tie it all together, the moment that would break the audience's hearts. As the last beats of the scene played out, I finally allowed myself to relax. We'd done it. Against all odds, we'd pulled off one of the most complex and crucial scenes in the entire film. Cut. I called out, my voice a mix of relief and exhilaration. The set erupted into cheers and applause. Charles, still lying on the ground, raised a triumphant fist in the air, before groaning dramatically. "Someone want to help me up," he called out. "I think I'm actually dead this time." As the crew rushed to assist our fallen star and begin the cleanup process, I couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. We'd taken a shoestring budget, a bunch of misfits, and a whole lot of determination, and turned it into something, well, something pretty damn impressive. "Not bad, kid," Rocky rumbled, appearing at my side. For a minute there, I almost believed we were watching a real hit go down. I grinned, still riding the high of a successful shoot. "Thanks, Rocky. Let's just hope the audience feels the same way." We began to pack up, ready to film the next scenes. As usual, we huddled around our janky projector to review the day's work. The restaurant scene flickered to life, and I found myself leaning forward, scrutinizing every frame. It was good, damn good, if I do say so myself, but not perfect. A few shots needed touching up, but nothing we couldn't handle with a quick reshoot. "All right," I announced, clapping my hands to get everyone's attention. "We've got a couple of pickups to do, then we're out of here. Let's make it snappy. I hear there's a sale on ketchup down at the Hellmart, and we're running low." The crew chuckled, already moving to reset the scene. It never ceased to amaze me how quickly they could transform from a bunch of misfits into a well-oiled machine. We knocked out the reshoots in record time, and before I knew it, we were wrapping up for the day. As the crew filed out, chattering about plans for the evening, I found myself alone in the studio once again. The silence was almost deafening after the constant buzz of filming. I sighed, looking around at the empty space that had become both my workplace and my home. Talk about living the dream, huh? But there was no time for self-pity. I had work to do. I settled in at my makeshift editing station, surrounded by reels of film and the constant whir of our ancient film splicer. This had become my nightly ritual over the past week, splicing film strips, syncing up the Banshee Sisters' haunting soundtrack, trying to piece together our cinematic puzzle. The Banshee's music drifted through the studio as I synced it to the visuals. Their otherworldly melodies sent shivers down my spine, even after hearing them 100 times. It was perfect, hauntingly beautiful, and just the right amount of unsettling. Just like our movie. Hours ticked by, marked only by the rhythmic snip of the splicer and the occasional curse when I messed up a cut. My eyes burned, my back ached, but I couldn't stop. This wasn't just busy work, this was creation in its purest form. As the first rays of dawn began to peek through the grimy studio windows, I sat back, rubbing my bleary eyes. The editing table was a mess of film strips and discarded cuts, but the reel in front of me, that was magic. I threaded it through the projector with trembling hands, holding my breath as the image flickered to life on the wall. There it was, rough and unpolished, but undeniably alive. Our movie. Our Demonfather. As I watched Michael's transformation play out, backed by the haunting strains of the Banshee Sisters, I felt a lump form in my throat. We were doing it. Actually doing it. I slumped back in my chair, exhaustion and exhilaration warring for dominance. There was still so much to do, so many scenes to shoot and edit. But in that moment, watching our creation come to life in the pale light of dawn, I knew it was all worth it. Days blurred together in a haze of film reels and ketchup blood. I decided to postpone shooting Michael's exile scenes, focusing instead on the parts where I could stay behind the camera. Today's big scene? Sonny's dramatic demise at the toll booth. We'd set up shop at Horns Field, a patch of land in Great Neck that happened to have a conveniently placed toll booth. As I surveyed our makeshift set, I couldn't help but chuckle at the sight of Charles Flirt living up to his name. Our Sunny was currently engaged in what I can only describe as a tragically unsuccessful attempt to woo one of our crew members. The poor demoness looked like she was trying to decide between laughter and a restraining order. "Charles," I called out, trying to keep the amusement out of my voice. "We're about to film." The scale demon turned, his face a picture of embarrassed chagrin. "Oh, okay," he called back, giving the demoness one last wink before sauntering over. I shook my head, grinning. "You know, Charles, you're supposed to save the charm for on camera." He shrugged, scales glinting in the sunlight. "Can't help it, boss. It's in my blood." "Yeah, well, try to keep it in your pants for the next few hours, alright? We've got a death scene to film." As the crew bustled around, setting up cameras and rigging our makeshift special effects, I couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. We've come a long way from our janky warehouse beginnings. Take our car, for instance. On paper, it was a piece of junk from the failing demon company called Fire of Hell. But with a little demonic ingenuity, and a lot of elbow grease, George and I had transformed it into something that could almost pass for elegant. At least from a distance. And with squinted eyes. "Alright, people," I called out, clapping my hands to get everyone's attention. "Places, everyone. Charles, you ready to meet your maker?" Charles grinned, sliding into the driver's seat of our refurbished chariot. "Born ready, boss. Just make sure the ketchup's warm this time, yeah? That cold stuff gives me the creeps." I laughed, shaking my head as I made my way behind the camera. "No promises, superstar. Alright, let's make a best scene. And, action." The scene unfolded like a well-orchestrated dance of chaos. Charles, fully in Sunny mode, pulled up to the toll booth, his face a perfect mask of casual annoyance. Our extra, playing the toll booth operator, went through the motions of collecting the fare. I held my breath, willing everything to go smoothly. We couldn't afford a do-over on this one, both literally and figuratively. The special effects for this scene had cost us an arm and a leg, thankfully not literally. Suddenly, Charles's expression shifted, a flicker of realization crossing his face. Right on cue, the toll booth operator ducked out of sight, and our suit-clad demon emerged, brandishing a Tommy gun that looked surprisingly realistic thanks to some clever runic enhancements. Charles's eyes widened in genuine surprise, whether it was good acting or actual shock at how real everything looked, I couldn't tell. But it worked. As he scrambled to get out of the car, all hell broke loose. The fake windows, because there was no way we were destroying the actual car, it was probably worth more than our entire production at this point, shattered in a shower of safety glass and magic sparks. I silently cheered Charles on as he stumbled out of the vehicle. This was it, the moment of truth. Our ambushers emerged from their hiding spots, unleashing a barrage of magical bullets. Charles put on a performance that would make any stunt coordinator proud. He jerked and twisted with each imaginary impact, his face a mask of shock and pain. As he finally crumpled to the ground, continuing to twitch and jerk as the bullets kept coming, I had to remind myself to breathe. It was just acting, after all. Our attackers, seemingly satisfied that Sunny was well and truly deader than dead, made their hasty exit. Right on cue, another car pulled up, and our Corleone family man stepped out, his face a perfect picture of stunned disbelief as he took in the scene. I gestured frantically to our cameraman, making sure he captured both Charles's prone form and the distant figure of the family man. This was the shot that would tie it all together, the moment that would break the audience's hearts. As the last beats of the scene played out, I finally allowed myself to relax. We'd done it. Against all odds, we'd pulled off one of the most complex and crucial scenes in the entire film. "Cut!" I called out, my voice a mix of relief and exhilaration. The set erupted into cheers and applause. Charles, still lying on the ground, raised a triumphant fist in the air, before groaning dramatically. "Someone want to help me up," he called out. "I think I'm actually dead this time." As the crew rushed to assist our fallen star and begin the cleanup process, I couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. We'd taken a shoestring budget, a bunch of misfits, and a whole lot of determination, and turned it into something, well, something pretty damn impressive. "Not bad, kid," Rocky rumbled, appearing at my side. For a minute there, I almost believed we were watching a real hit go down. I grinned, still riding the high of a successful shoot. "Thanks, Rocky." Let's just hope the audience feels the same way. We began to pack up, ready to film the next scenes. After calling cut on Apollonia's tragic demise, I made my way over to Vivian. She seemed to be avoiding eye contact, but I pressed on, determined to clear the air. "You're quite a good actress," I said, trying to sound casual. "I can see you're passionate about your career." "I admire that." "Thanks," she replied with a small smile. "You're unexpectedly great at acting too." I chuckled inwardly. Unexpectedly? She wasn't wrong. I was as shocked as anyone by my newfound acting chops. "Well, I hope you had fun acting in my film," I said, extending my hand. "Hope to work with you in the future." She shook my hand, her grip firm. "I'd have had more fun if you weren't using your position as director to take advantage of me," she quipped, a mischievous glint in her eye. I laughed, relieved we were back to our usual banter. "Take advantage of you? If anything, I think I'm the one being taken advan." She cut me off with a light punch to the shoulder. "Ow. Okay. Maybe I'm not a good director after all. I'm a bad demon, remember?" Once our laughter died down, I couldn't help but ask, "By the way, why did you suddenly run away from the room yesterday?" Her smile faded, replaced by a guarded expression. "Humph. That's none of your business, Your Highness," she said sarcastically, turning to walk away. I scratched the back of my head, watching her go. Working with an actress like her had definitely been an experience. As we packed up and headed back to Furlan City, I couldn't help but feel relieved that our time in Ashen Plains had gone smoothly. The Asmodeus family hadn't interfered, a small miracle in itself. Hours later, we were back in the familiar chaos of Furlan City. As the crew dispersed and the actors said their goodbyes, I found myself lingering, watching Vivian disappear into the crowd. Me and my team went our separate ways to rest. The next few days flew by in a whirlwind of activity. Despite our collective inexperience in filmmaking, we were starting to find our rhythm. Each scene we shot felt a little smoother, a little more natural. It was like watching a bunch of fledgling demons learn to fly, awkward at first, but gradually gaining confidence. "You know," George remarked one day as we wrapped a particularly complex scene, "I think we might actually be getting good at this." I grinned, clapping him on the shoulder. "Don't jinx it, my friend. We've still got a long way to go." Then came the big one, the death of Don Vito Corleone. Rocky outdid himself, his performance so moving that I almost forgot he was the same guy who used to sell me tickets at the theater. After that, we moved on to the funeral scene at Hades, our stand-in for a demon graveyard. It was a somber affair, at least on camera. Off camera, it was more like a circus, with extras tripping over headstones and our makeup artist chasing after demons whose horns kept poking through their wigs. The 4 family heads gathered to pay their respects, each one a character straight out of a demon's fever dream. I'd cast powerful, intelligent-looking demons for these roles, but Don Barzini was something special. The wolf demon we'd snagged for the part looked like he'd stepped right out of a nightmare, with piercing eyes, pointed ears, and a tail that seemed to have a mind of its own. As we rolled camera, I was blown away by the performances. These rock-bottom actors were pouring their hearts out, their faces a masterclass in subtle emotion. They sympathized with Michael on the surface, all sad eyes and comforting pats on the shoulder. But underneath, you could see the gleam of satisfaction in their eyes, the barely concealed joy at the Corleone family's misfortune. "Cut," I called, feeling a surge of pride. That was incredible, everyone." Rocky sidled up to me, still in his Don Vito makeup, despite being very much dead in the scene. "Not bad for a bunch of demon rejects, huh?" I nodded, watching as our wolf demon Don Barzini chatted amiably with the other family heads, his tail wagging slightly. With Don Vito laid to rest, we jumped forward in our story timeline. Weeks had passed since the funeral, and it was time for one of the most iconic scenes in the film, the baptism. Our location? A Solaris church right in the heart of the Gloomstone district. The irony wasn't lost on me. A human god's church in a demon city? If you'd told me about this in my previous life, I'd have laughed you out of the room. But here, in this world? It was just another Tuesday. Solaris, the human sun god, had quite the following, even among demons, though it was a minority. It was a fact that still boggled my mind sometimes. This divine popularity had led to a subset of demons becoming more, well, tame isn't quite the right word, but let's go with less prone to spontaneous acts of chaos and destruction. Sure, the majority of demons might look down their noses, or snouts, or whatever, at these Solaris-worshipping minorities, but you couldn't deny the power the human god held. It was like watching a bunch of cats suddenly decide to follow the ways of a particularly charismatic dog, unexpected, but undeniably intriguing. Using a scene where a demon family like the Corleones gets baptized in a Solaris church wasn't just acceptable, it was relatable. I could already imagine demons across the kingdom nodding along, seeing a bit of themselves or their neighbors in our fictional family. Of course, in the world of our film, things were a bit different. The Corleones and the other families existed in a version of Empirica that was a melting pot of races, not the human-dominated powerhouse it was in reality. We'd taken some creative liberties with place names too, crafting a world that was familiar yet distinctly our own. We arrived at the church, a surprisingly grand affair for a demon district. The demon priest, an actual man of the cloth, or whatever the demonic equivalent is, had agreed to let us use the place for filming. Apparently, having film crews in churches wasn't all that unusual. Who knew? I couldn't help but chuckle to myself, though. If this priest had any idea what we were about to film, Michael denying the evil in his heart while simultaneously ordering a series of brutal assassinations, well, let's just say we might have found ourselves looking for a new location. As my crew bustled around, setting up lights and cameras, I watched the demon baby who'd be playing Michael's godchild. The little tyke was gurgling happily, blissfully unaware of the pivotal role it was about to play in our demonic drama. The priest approached me, his face solemn. "Do you reject the forces of evil and darkness?" he intoned, clearly expecting me to repeat after him. I nodded, fighting to keep a straight face. If only he knew. We breezed through the church scene, the contrast between the holy setting and what we were actually filming giving me a perverse thrill. Then it was on to the real meat of the sequence, the assassination of the 4 family heads. By the time we wrapped for the day, everyone was exhausted but buzzing with excitement. We were in the home stretch now, the end of filming finally in sight. Later that night, I found myself alone in the studio, as usual. As I began editing the baptism scene, intercut with the brutal assassinations, I felt a surge of excitement. This was at the moment where everything came together, where Michael's transformation from reluctant outsider to cold-blooded Don was complete. Watching the footage, seeing myself swear to reject evil while images of violence flashed across the screen, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of something. Pride? Guilt? Maybe a bit of both. I shook off the feeling. This was art, after all. And if it made people uncomfortable, well, that was kind of the point, wasn't it? As I continued to work late into the night, piecing together our demonic masterpiece, I couldn't help but wonder what people would think when they finally saw it. Would they understand what we were trying to say? Would they see past the horns and tails to the universal story underneath? Only time would tell. But one thing was for sure, the Demonfather was almost ready to make his debut. And demon world or human world, nobody was going to know what hit them. Morning came way too early after a night of intense editing, but I dragged myself out of bed to meet the team. We had a movie to finish, after all. Hours of filming later, we were finally at the last scene, the big confrontation between Michael and Kay at the Shadow Estate. As I looked around the study, watching the crew make their final preparations, I felt a mix of exhaustion and excitement. This was it. I nodded to start rolling, and Furfel jumped right into character as Kay. "Michael, is it true?" she demanded, her voice trembling with worry and anger. I took a drag from my cigarette, channeling all of Michael's newfound coldness. "Don't ask me about my business, Kay." Furfel's voice rose, her elven tones making even her anger sound musical. "Is it true?" I matched her intensity, jabbing my finger for emphasis. "Don't ask me about my business." "No." Furfel cried, every inch the distraught wife. And then, something shifted. I felt a strange heat in my eyes as I said, "Enough." The word came out calm, but there was an icy edge to it that surprised even me. I waited for Furfel to call me out on my weird delivery, but she just stared at me, wide-eyed. Assuming she was deep in character, I pressed on. "All right. This one time," I said, my voice low. "This one time, you can ask me about my affairs." Furfel's face was a mask of conflicting emotions. She was quiet for a few seconds as she asked, "Did you?" I looked her straight in the eye, shaking my head slightly. "No." The tension held for a moment before Furfel's face softened. She approached me, and we embraced. I kissed her cheek, trying desperately to stay in character and not think about how nice she smelled. As soon as I called cut, I bolted for the projector, eager to review the scene and hide my embarrassment. When I said enough, did I not look the part? I asked Furful, worried I'd messed up the crucial moment. Was it bad? Furful looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Bad? It was actually good. You said enough so coldly it gave me chills. I laughed, not buying it. You're joking. It's true, boss, Klein chimed in. I even saw your eyes change color. Now it was my turn to look confused. My eyes changed color? Yeah, from golden to scarlet, another crew member added. It was terrifying. Really? I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. Furful looked thoughtful. I thought you did it on purpose. It's rare to see a royal demon eyes transform like that. It's a sign of great power, but... She trailed off, giving me a look that clearly said, but you're you, so... I chuckled inwardly. Yeah, I got it. Trashy prince and all that. Maybe your eyes changed because of your emotion as Michael? Furful suggested. Maybe, I said, not entirely convinced. As the crew bustled around, preparing to review the footage, I couldn't shake a nagging feeling. Had I really tapped into something deeper for that scene? And if I had, what did that mean? We huddled around the projector, and sure enough, there it was. Right after I said enough, my eyes shifted from their usual golden hue to a deep, unsettling scarlet. It was like watching a spark catch fire, bringing a chill to the room despite the heat in my gaze. I didn't understand how or why my eyes had changed, but I wasn't about to look a gift demon horse in the mouth. This unexpected transformation captured Michael's inner turmoil perfectly. Sometimes, dumb luck is the best director. Well, I said, trying to sound nonchalant, I guess we don't need to reshoot that one. The crew murmured in agreement, still looking at me like I might spontaneously combust at any moment. Great. We quickly set up for the final shot. Furful, as Kay, left the room after our embrace. The camera followed her, capturing the moment she turned back to see Michael's men approaching him, kissing his ring in a show of loyalty. The door swung shut, leaving Kay and the future audience on the outside looking in. And, cut. I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. For a moment, nobody moved. It was like we were all holding our breath, afraid to break the spell. Then it hit me. We'd done it. The Demonfather was complete. That's a wrap, everyone, I said, my voice cracking slightly. We actually did it. The studio erupted into cheers and applause. Crew members were hugging each other, some even crying, though they'd probably blame it on some errant hellfire smoke if you asked. As the euphoria of wrapping up the film began to settle, it was time for goodbyes. We bid farewell to our main cast, the demons who'd brought Tom Hagen, Peter Clemenza, and the rest to life. It felt strange, like saying goodbye to family members we'd only just met. Furful lingered behind, her eyes sparkling with an emotion I couldn't quite place. You know, she said, a small smile playing on her lips, when I first signed up for this role, I had no idea the script was written by a young prince of the Morningstar royal family. I thought it was just from some aspiring director with a wild imagination. I couldn't help but chuckle. Well, I'm not exactly a prince anymore. So yeah, you're right, it did come from an aspiring director. I shrugged, trying to play it cool. Furful shook her head, her expression turning serious. No, seriously. When I found out it was you, I had my doubts. I loved the script, thought it was unique. But I was worried you'd ruin it. Ouch, I said, clutching my chest in mock pain. Tell me how you really feel, why don't you? She rolled her eyes, but her smile remained. Let me finish, you drama queen. What I'm trying to say is, you proved me wrong. You didn't just do well, you did great. I raised an eyebrow, waiting for the punchline. I mean it, she continued. You're actually really good at directing. Despite having such a small, inexperienced crew, you led them well. The way you handled the camera angles, the sound composition, it was beautifully done. I felt my face heating up, and for once, it wasn't because my eyes were doing that weird color-changing thing. Thanks, I mumbled, suddenly finding my shoes very interesting. Inside, I was laughing. If only she knew that I'd basically stolen every camera angle and sound cue from the movie in my previous life. Thank hell for crystal clear past life memories, right? With the last echoes of "that's a wrap" fading away, we dove headfirst into the next challenge, editing. The studio, which had been a whirlwind of activity during filming, now became a different kind of chaos. Reels of film covered every surface, and the air hummed with the constant whir of projectors and splicers. My team and I were putting in overtime, fueled by a mix of determination and whatever passed for coffee in the demon world. We'd poured our souls into this film for weeks, and now it was time to shape it into something coherent. No pressure, right? Alright, people, I called out, my voice slightly hoarse from too many late nights and not enough sleep. Let's make this edit as tight as a miser's purse. We've got to be good and we've got to be quick. The Furlan Demon Film Festival is breathing down our necks, and we can't afford to miss it. A chorus of "got it, boss" echoed around the room, punctuated by the snipping of film and the occasional curse as someone inevitably nicked a finger. Then, from the corner, came a gruff voice that could only belong to Rocky. "Why am I editing here? I thought I was only an actor?" I couldn't help but chuckle. "It's your fault for boasting so much about your film editing skills a few days ago. Consider this your audition for a new career." Rocky grumbled something that sounded suspiciously like "smart-ass kid," but I saw the glimmer of a smile on his face as he bent over a reel of film. As we worked, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of anxiety. Each frame of film was precious and expensive. We'd been careful during filming, but now every cut felt like a life-or-death decision. One wrong snip and we could lose a crucial moment, a perfect expression, a bit of magic we'd never be able to recreate. "Hey, boss," George called out, holding up a strip of film. "Remember when your eyes did that weird color change thing? Should we, edit that out?" I paused, considering. That moment had been unintentional, unexpected, and absolutely perfect for Michael's character arc. Leave it in, I decided. Sometimes the best bits of movies are the accidents. Weeks of filming, followed by 2 solid weeks of editing, had left us all looking like we'd been dragged through the 9 circles of hell. And now, with the Furlan Demon Film Festival, FDFF, looming just 2 days away, we were running on fumes and whatever passed for coffee in the demon realm. As the sun peeked over the horizon, signaling the end of our marathon editing session, a cheer erupted in the studio. We'd done it. 3 hours of demonic cinematic glory, ready for the world to see. The team hugged each other, exhausted but elated. I couldn't help but overhear their tired mumblings. "Sob, I thought our suffering finally ended when we finished filming. Turns out editing is much worse." "You're right. It was so tiring. I kind of miss doing makeup for the cast. Now it's complete, I'm glad." I had to bite back a laugh. If only they knew this was just the beginning. After bidding farewell to my weary crew, I crashed hard, sleeping like the dead, which, in demon terms, is pretty impressive. I woke up at 10 p.m., feeling like I'd been hit by a hellhound. The studio was eerily quiet. Seems like the rest of the crew was either still in bed or just dragging themselves back to consciousness. It wasn't until 1 p.m. that everyone had finally trickled in, looking like they'd been through a war. "Alright, guys," I said, once everyone was assembled. "Now that we've completed the filming and editing, it's time for the moment of truth. We're going to review the whole film." A buzz of excitement ran through the group. Amazing how quickly exhaustion can turn to enthusiasm when there's a chance to see the fruits of your labor. As we settled in to watch, I couldn't help but sneak glances at my team. Their expressions ranged from disbelief to awe as the film unfolded. We did this film?" I heard someone whisper. "I know, right? We're only 2 hours in, and it's so good." I chuckled to myself. They probably thought we'd end up with something passably average. After all, what else could you expect from a bunch of inexperienced misfits led by an exiled prince who hadn't even finished high school? But as the film played on, I felt a swell of pride. We'd done it. Against all odds, we'd created something, well, something pretty damn good. "Well," I said as the credits rolled, "I guess we didn't completely mess it up, huh?" The studio erupted in cheers and laughter. Rocky clapped me on the back, nearly knocking me over. "Not bad, kid. Not bad at all." As the excitement died down, reality set in. We had a film. A good film, even. But now came the real challenge, getting people to watch it. With our film finally complete, it was time for the moment of truth, submitting it to the festival. I found myself in the lobby of the FDFF headquarters, surrounded by a sea of hopeful filmmakers, each clutching their precious reels like lifelines. The moment I walked in, all eyes turned to me. I could practically hear their thoughts. Look, it's the exiled prince. What's he doing here? Their stares ranged from curious to outright hostile. Great. Just what I needed, more pressure. I approached the submission desk, where a bored-looking demon sat, his horns curled around a pair of reading glasses. His name tag read Brimstone, Film Intake Coordinator. Name and film title? He drawled, not bothering to look up. Arthur Morningstar, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The film is called The Demonfather. At that, Brimstone's head snapped up, his eyes widening in recognition. Morningstar? As in the exiled prince? I nodded, bracing myself for rejection. To my surprise, a slow grin spread across Brimstone's face. Well. This ought to be interesting. All right, Your Ex-Highness, let's see what you've got. I handed over our film reels, each one feeling like it weighed a ton. Brimstone hefted them, raising an eyebrow. 3 hours, huh? Ambitious. As he started filling out the paperwork, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was too easy. Don't you need to review it first? I asked, immediately regretting opening my mouth. Brimstone chuckled. Kid, half the fun of this festival is seeing what kind of train wrecks make it through. And a movie made by an exiled prince? That's too good to pass up. I wasn't sure whether to be relieved or offended. But hey, we were in. That's what mattered, right? As I turned to leave, paperwork in hand, Brimstone called out, Hey, Morningstar. I looked back. Break a leg, he said, then added with a wink, or a horn. Whatever works for you demons. As I walked out of the lobby, past the staring crowd of fellow filmmakers, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and dread. We'd cleared the first hurdle, but the real test was yet to come. 2 days flew by in a blur of anxiety and last-minute preparations. Before we knew it, the Furland Demon Film Festival was in full swing, transforming the Indulgence District into a glittering spectacle of demonic glamour. We found ourselves huddled at the edge of the red carpet, watching as a parade of demon celebrities arrived in vehicles that probably cost more than our entire production budget. The air crackled with excitement and the faint scent of brimstone. My crew, bless their demonic hearts, were absolutely losing it. Their professional demeanor vanished the moment the first star-studded limo pulled up. Is that Lee from the Beelzebub acting family? Lee! George shouted, jumping up and down like an excited imp. One of our makeup artists, a young demoness named Lilith, practically swooned. That's Jonathan from the Lust family. Her eyes were so wide I was worried they might pop out of her head. You like that guy? Mara, another crew member, scoffed. I don't like him. I prefer Leonardo from the Jackson family. Humph, Jonathan is way more handsome than your Leonardo, Lilith shot back. At least he's not a lustful guy like Jonathan. That's natural. He is from the Lust family. Heh. Heard he was having relationships with both women and men. That's a lie. I watched this exchange with a mix of amusement and exasperation. Here we were, about to premiere our film at one of the biggest events in the demon world, and my crew was gossiping like teenagers at a Hellfire high school. Guys, I tried to interject, maybe we should focus on, oh my Satan. Rocky's voice boomed over the chatter. Is that Damien Darkflame? I turned to see a towering demon with skin like polished obsidian step out of a car that seemed to be made of living shadows. The crowd went wild. Who's Damien Darkflame? I asked, immediately regretting the question as every single member of my crew turned to stare at me in horror. Who's Damien Darkflame? George repeated, sounding scandalized. Only the biggest action star in the 9 circles. How can you not know Damien Darkflame? I shrugged, feeling very much like the out-of-touch exiled prince I was. Been a bit busy making a movie, remember? As my crew launched into a detailed explanation of Damien Darkflame's filmography, apparently, he was famous for his catchphrase "Hell hath no fury like me," I couldn't help but feel a twinge of nervousness. We were small fry in a big, fiery pond. But then I remembered our film. The Demonfather. Our labor of love, sweat, and probably a little too much ketchup. We might not have the glamour or the star power, but we had heart. And in the movie business, sometimes that's all you need. Alright, team, I said, interrupting the Darkflame debate. our time will come. For now, let's just enjoy the show. And maybe try not to drool too obviously over the celebrities, okay? They laughed, the tension breaking a little. I couldn't help but stare at Damien Darkflame. The guy looked like he could be Brad Pitt's demonic ancestor. It was uncanny. Truth be told, I'd never paid much attention to demon actors or films. Compared to the human movies, demon cinema felt lacking. Even the trashiest human films of this world outshone our demonic offerings. It was a hard truth, but there it was. As the celebrities preened and posed, fielding interviews and flashing fangs for the cameras, the festival's opening party kicked into high gear. That's when I noticed them humans, mingling among the demons. They weren't just any humans, though. These were the big shots, the power players of the global film industry. One of them, a human representative named Huey Bear from a major film distributor, took the stage. The moment he opened his mouth, I knew we were in for a show. I'm here today to watch demon films, he drawled, his voice dripping with condescension, to see if there's anything worth screening in my country. Though I wouldn't be surprised if there's nothing to see. His human colleagues, along with a smattering of dwarves and elves, burst into laughter. The demons in the crowd, however, were a different story. They smiled and nodded, playing along, but I could see the discomfort in their eyes, the way their tails twitched with suppressed anger. I couldn't blame them. As a demon, hearing that kind of talk was humiliating. But it wasn't anything new. We'd lost the war 400 years ago, and we'd been paying for it ever since. First, it was reparations for war damages. Now? We were just considered inferior. Part of me wanted to be outraged on behalf of my fellow demons. But another part, the part of me couldn't help but agree with Huey. Demon films did kind of suck. Can you believe that guy? George muttered, his tiny fists clenched in anger. I shrugged, trying to keep my voice neutral. He's not entirely wrong, you know. As the opening party wound down, the real meat of the festival began. The first film up was Pure Succubus, a production from the big guns at Demon Pictures. Being part of the competing films ourselves, we scored free seats. Small victories, right? The director and cast gave their spiel, all smiles and false modesty. Then the lights dimmed, and we were off. I settled in, expecting another run-of-the-mill demon flick. The lead actress, a real succubus playing a succubus, was paired with a C-list human actor from Empirica. Their on-screen chemistry was surprisingly compelling. The story followed the succubus as she fell in love and made the decision to change her ways, striving to become pure for her beloved. But when they moved to Empirica, things took a dark turn. The succubus caught the eye of her lover's father, leading to a disturbing subplot of secret abuse. The film didn't shy away from the psychological toll this took on her. The real gut punch came when her lover, who had professed his undying love earlier, rejected her after learning about the situation with his father. The film didn't spell it out, but the implication was clear: he blamed her, the victim, rather than standing by her. The ending was a punch to the gut. Our protagonist, broken and disillusioned, returned to her old life as a prostitute. It was a tragic finale that left the audience in stunned silence before the applause began. As the credits rolled, I found myself clapping along with the rest of the audience. I had to admit, I was impressed. This wasn't just good for a demon film, it was genuinely good cinema. It tackled complex themes, didn't shy away from difficult topics, and managed to evoke real emotion. Well, I muttered to myself, looks like demon cinema just upped its game. George, wiping a tear from his eye, nodded in agreement. Boss, that was, wow. Just wow, our big day was coming. Tomorrow, the Demonfather would screen the first colored film in the festival, maybe ever. Not that the higher-ups knew that. They'd accepted us without so much as a peek at the reels. Their loss, our gain. Today was all about the major studio flicks. Tomorrow? That was our time to shine. I'd invited the whole cast to join us for the screening. As I arrived at the studio early the next morning, I was greeted by familiar faces. Furful, Charles, Johnny, they were all there. And to my surprise, even the ever-arrogant Vivian had deigned to show up. Well, I said, unable to keep the grin off my face. Look who decided to grace us with her presence. Vivian rolled her eyes, but I caught the hint of a smile. Don't let it go to your head, Your Ex-Highness. I'm just here to see how badly you butchered my performance. We made our way to the festival as a group, a ragtag bunch of misfits ready to take on the demon film world. But as we approached the theater, we stopped short. There, larger than life, was our poster. The Demonfather, it proclaimed in bold letters. And right below, an exiled prince film. I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't how I wanted us to be known. But as I looked around, I realized it was having an effect. People were stopping, pointing, whispering. Unbelievable, I overheard one demon say to another. That trash actually made a film. I wonder if it's as much of a disaster as the prince himself. His companion snickered. Maybe we should watch it. You know, for a laugh. Hee hee, I'm interested, a third chimed in. Could be fun to see how bad it is. I felt a hand on my shoulder and turned to see Rocky, his face set in a determined scowl. Don't let em get to you, kid. They'll be eating those words soon enough. I nodded, squaring my shoulders. You're right. Let them come. Let them expect the worst. Furful stepped up beside me, her eyes gleaming with a mix of mischief and determination. And then we'll blow their horns off. The moment arrived. Our ragtag group, me, my crew, and our cast stepped onto the stage. I could feel the weight of every eye in the theater on us. Skepticism hung thick in the air, almost as palpable as the ever-present scent of brimstone. I cleared my throat, willing my voice not to shake. As many of you know, this festival will be screening my first film. And many of you probably doubt this film of mine, but I assure you, you'll be surprised. A voice from the audience cut through the silence. Surprised? Yeah. We'll be surprised at how bad it is. Laughter erupted, echoing off the walls. I felt my face heat up, but forced myself to keep smiling. Bad? I shot back, trying to keep my cool. You'll be eating your words later. Not only is the story of my film a masterpiece, but it's also in color. The laughter died down, replaced by a buzz of confusion. Colored? You mean it's not black and white anymore? Someone asked. A human in the audience spoke up, his voice laced with disbelief. That can't be. Even in our country, no colored camera has been invented yet. The murmuring grew louder. I thought I'd scored a point, but then a demon's snort cut through the chatter. Who cares if it's really in color? If it's a trash film, it's a trash film. You're right. Others agreed. I felt that familiar heat in my eyes, the same feeling I'd had when they changed color before. The urge to let loose, to show them all just how wrong they were, was almost overwhelming. But then I caught George and Rocky's eyes. They gave me subtle nods, silent reminders to keep my cool. I took a deep breath, forcing the heat back down. Well, I said, somehow managing to keep my voice steady, I guess you'll just have to see for yourselves. Enjoy the show. As we left the stage and the lights dimmed, I felt a mix of dread and anticipation. This was it. No more talk, no more promises. It was time for the Demonfather to speak for itself. The projector whirred to life, and suddenly, there it was. Our film, larger than life, in glorious color. I heard gasps from the audience as the first scenes unfolded. Even in the dim light, I could see jaws dropping, eyes widening. Holy hellfire, I heard someone whisper. It really is in color. As the familiar strains of our Banshee Sisters soundtrack filled the theater, I allowed myself a small smile. We'd gotten their attention. Now it was time to blow their minds. As the dialogue between Amerigo and Don Vito unfolded on screen, I noticed the entire theater had fallen into a hushed silence. The audience was captivated. I couldn't help but smirk inwardly. Sure, I could hear some murmurs about the colored film, but it was clear that the interest went beyond just the technical achievement. The opening dialogues itself had piqued their curiosity. This was a good sign. A very good sign. If the audience was this engaged, there was a real chance that the Demonfather could turn a profit. Even better, we might catch the eye of some film distributors willing to take a chance on us. After all, isn't that what this festival is really about? It's a chance for indie filmmakers like us to grab the attention of distributors who might be willing to take our film to a wider audience. As these thoughts raced through my mind, I forced myself to relax. It was time to sit back and enjoy the fruits of our labor. We'd poured our hearts and souls into this film, and now it was time to let it speak for itself. I settled into my seat, confident that everything would fall into place. Whatever happened next, we'd already achieved something remarkable. We'd made a film that had a theater full of skeptics sitting in rapt attention. Not bad for a bunch of demon misfits and one exiled prince. Human? POV, well, isn't this a turn of events? Interesting, and if I'm being honest, a tad infuriating. It was supposed to be another routine assignment, watch some subpar demon films, write a scathing review, and give our readers back home a good laugh. But this? A colored film? In a demon city, of all places? It's like expecting to find coal and stumbling upon a diamond. Let's be clear, demons aren't exactly known for their cinematic prowess. Compared to the dwarves' technical marvels or the elves' artistic masterpieces from their verdant cities, demon films have always been the punchline of industry jokes. Back in Angel City, eyebrows were raised when we critics announced our attendance. Why bother, they asked. But we knew the game. We came for one simple, deliciously cynical reason: everyone loves a good failure story, especially when it's about demons. It's a tried and true formula. We cover their fumbling attempts at art, their technological mishaps, their societal quirks. Our readers eat it up, reveling in the sense of superiority it provides. It's not pretty, but it sells papers and keeps the clicks coming. After all, demons, bless their little horned heads, are a goldmine of flaws and struggles. In a world where every other race seems to be sprinting ahead, they're the ones tripping over their own tails. It makes for great copy. So here we were, pens sharpened and ready to eviscerate another year of demon cinema. My fellow humans back home were salivating for tales of cinematic disasters. But then, this year's Demon Festival is certainly exceptional. Pure succubus wasn't half bad. Unusual, I thought. A fluke, surely. And now this. In the Grand Crimson Theatre, we're witnessing not just a passable film, but a technological leap forward. A colored film, for hell's sake. I hate to admit it, but as the opening scenes unfold, I find myself being pulled into the world of this film. The soundtrack, the dialogue, the color, it's all working together in a way I never expected from a demon production. A demon-colored film I'd written off as trash before it even began is now commanding my full attention. There are some confusing elements at first, mentions of empirica and other ambiguous terms. But then comes the narration, clearly the voice of that exiled prince, Arthur. He's trying to sound elegant, but there's no mistaking that youthful timbre. This is the story of the rise and fall of a family who lives in Empirica, a human nation that housed mixed races, demons, dwarves, and of course, humans. He begins. This country was once a human race dominant only nation. It means, only humans is getting the rights while other races wasn't getting any, but later, with the laws passed, races begun to file in, and races are allowed to have their own business, properties, and especially, rights. It's a clever framing device, providing context for this fictional world. I can see my fellow Empiricans in the audience nodding along, understanding that this is just fiction, much like how we humans have fictionalized demon kingdoms. The narration continues as the wedding party scene unfolds. Arthur's voice takes on a more ominous tone. After the races gains their own rights in the nation of Empirica, other races such as dwarves, elves, begun to thrive, yet they couldn't compare to the one race that thrives the most. There's a pause, laden with anticipation. The demon race, Arthur intones. I feel an involuntary chill at those words. The effect is immediate and powerful, especially as we then see Don Vito Corleone, every inch the powerful demon in an expensive suit, greeting his guests. Don Barzini. Welcome, Corleone says, his voice a low rumble. Don Corleone, replies Don Barzini, a wolf demon who kisses Vito's ring with a mix of respect and wariness. As the film progresses, I can't help but notice how the demon characters, particularly Don Corleone and Don Barzini, exude an aura of power and authority that's almost palpable. It's unsettling, to say the least. Then, unexpectedly, Arthur Morningstar himself appears on screen. The exiled prince, not content with merely directing, has cast himself in his own film. He appears in his own film? This doesn't bode well for the story, the dwarf beside me remarks loudly. I find myself nodding in agreement. If Arthur is playing a significant character and his acting turns out to be subpar, it could derail the entire production. As the film opening scenes progressed, it becomes clear that Michael is a significant character to the story. This realization sends a ripple of anticipation, and not the good kind, through the audience. Like the others, I'm half expecting the film to take a nosedive. Directing is challenging enough, but to act in a major role simultaneously? It's a recipe for disaster. Arthur's split focus could easily compromise both his performance and his direction. I sigh, feeling a mix of disappointment and, is that relief? If the film turns out to be a flop, it would align with our usual narrative about demon incompetence. It would be easier to write about, more in line with what our readers expect. Still, a part of me can't help but think even if it's bad, it's the first colored demon film. That alone will make it a talking point, right? As the film progresses, I find my initial assumptions being thoroughly upended. We all thought Arthur's self-importance would lead him to make his character, Michael, the focal point, a vanity project destined to ruin what could have been a promising story. But we couldn't have been more wrong. Contrary to our expectations, the film doesn't revolve around Michael at all. There's no constant narration from Arthur like earlier, no spotlight-hogging scenes. Instead, we're drawn into the intricate web of a family's story, with Don Corleone at its center. And speaking of Don Corleone, the scene unfolding before us sends another chill down my spine, more intense than before. Johnny Fontaine, clearly distressed, buries his face in his hands. "I don't know what to do," he laments. Don Vito's reaction is swift and harsh. He barks at Johnny, slapping him across the face. "Act like a man." The Don even mocks Johnny's whining, imitating his "I don't know what to do" in a pitiful voice, while Tom Hagen laughs in the background. It's a display of raw power and contempt that leaves me feeling unsettled. But it's Don Vito's next words that truly give me goosebumps. "I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse." The way the actor delivers this line, it's chilling in its calm assurance. There's a weight to his words, a promise of action that's both reassuring and terrifying. Arthur's POV, I can't help but feel a surge of satisfaction as I watch the audience being pulled into my film story. The scene where the human director wakes up to find his favorite unicorn's head in his bed is playing out, and the reaction is everything I'd hoped for. The director's shriek echoes through the theater. Ah! His hands and clothes are covered in blood, adding to the horror of the moment. I hear whispers from the audience around me, "That's very horrible. I couldn't even imagine my favorite pet's head on my bed bleeding. That is such a lowly thing to do." A smile tugs at the corners of my mouth. They're discussing the story, debating the methods of the Corleone family. Whether they approve or not doesn't matter, they're engaged. The plot has captured their attention, just as I'd intended. Major picture CEO? POV, okay, I'll admit it. As a human, I came here expecting a trashy demon film. What I'm watching instead is not just good, it's remarkable. Sure, the film isn't over yet, so I can't make a final judgment. But so far, it's doing a hell of a job keeping me and probably everyone else entertained. And let me tell you, keeping me entertained by a demon film for 30 minutes is a miracle in itself. Even pure succubus, from that major demon studio, couldn't hold my interest for more than 10 minutes, despite its surprising premise. But this? A film made by an infamous, supposedly trashy demon prince of history? And I'm actually invested in the story? It's nothing short of miraculous. As I watch the shocking scene with the unicorn head unfold, I find myself genuinely affected. The gasps and murmurs around me confirm I'm not alone. Well. Looks like this little excursion to the so-called trashy demon film festival wasn't a waste of time after all. As the CEO of the major film distributor in Southern Archipelago, I'm starting to see some real potential here. This Demonfather might just be worth picking up. The story unfolds before me, and I find myself unexpectedly still engrossed. There's a scene where Connie, daughter of the oh-so-powerful Don Corleone, is being abused by her half-demon, half-human husband, Carlo. It's brutal, uncomfortable, and, surprisingly nuanced. Connie, bless her demonic heart, keeps it all from her family. It's a clever bit of storytelling, really. Shows us that the Corleones, for all their supposed power and influence, aren't as untouchable as we were led to believe. Carlo's contempt for the family is palpable. I'm starting to see layers here. I munch on my popcorn, finding myself more invested with each passing scene. The pacing is spot on, I'll give them that. Then comes the assassination attempt on Don Corleone. The old vampire's buying oranges, of all things, when bang. He's down. The theater erupts in gasps and chatter. Is that powerful guy about to die with just that gun that only had basic magic? Someone asks incredulously. Another voice chimes in, he is old. Looking he is a vampire, He is probably already hundreds of years old, so it's understandable. Fair points, both. But then someone raises a question that's been nagging at me too. Isn't the Corleone a rich and powerful family? Why is the Don not wearing magical protection for something like that? Well, maybe the Don and the Corleone family is very confident that no one will attack them. That took them by surprise. And besides, with the Don seemingly a powerful old demon, he must have survived that attack, comes the reply. Oh. That makes sense. Does it, though? I'm not entirely convinced. Why such a sloppy assassination attempt? Why such useless guards? But you know what? I'm too engrossed to care about these nitpicks right now. Truth be told, even if this film ends up disappointing me in its final act, I'm already set on acquiring the distribution rights for Southern Archipelago. It's slightly flawed, sure, but it's also compelling in a way I never expected from a demon production. Time slips away unnoticed as I'm completely absorbed in the film, absent-mindedly munching on popcorn and sipping my drink. The scene where Michael visits his unguarded father at the hospital grabs my attention. It quickly escalates into an intense sequence that has my heart racing. Michael's frantic call to Sonny, followed by the hurried transfer of the Don to another room, is riveting. A dwarf nearby can't contain his excitement. Oh ho, this scene is getting intense. I bet there's about to be some serious action. His outburst is met with a chorus of angry shoo's from the audience. I smirk as he shrinks back in his seat. Serves him right for breaking the tension. The scene continues to build as Michael stands guard at the door. The sound of approaching footsteps has me on the edge of my seat. Is it an assassin coming to finish the job? But no, it's just Enzo, a civilian demon, paying his respects to the Don. A collective sigh of relief echoes through the theater, but the tension isn't over. Michael and Enzo stand at the hospital entrance, with Michael instructing, hands in your pockets. Act like you have a gun. Enzo's nervous tension is palpable as they stand there. A car passes by, causing Michael and Enzo to tense up, but it just drives on. I find myself sighing in relief along with Michael and Enzo. Just when I think it's over, the police arrive and interact with Michael and Enzo. One officer even slaps Michael across the face. Come on, Michael. Fight back, the elf beside me hisses angrily. I can't blame him, I feel angry on Michael's behalf too. But Michael just stands there, humiliation and anger in his eyes, without retaliating. I smile slightly. That's right, Michael. Don't fight back. I'm glad he didn't act rashly. It's not the right move for his family. TSK. He should have summoned the biggest fireball ever to put that police officer in flames, the elf grumbles. I shake my head slightly. Sure, there might be others who agree with the elf, who want to see some flashy demon vengeance. But I bet there are just as many who appreciate Michael's self-control, who understand that sometimes, for the good of the family, you have to swallow your pride. As the scene ends, I find myself more convinced than ever that this film is something special. It's not just about demon power fantasies or cheap thrills. There's real depth here, real understanding of power dynamics and family loyalty. I make a mental note to contact my lawyers first thing tomorrow. We need to secure the rights to this film before someone else snaps it up. As the film progresses, I find myself increasingly impressed by Michael's self-control. It's a refreshing change from the typical demon characters we see in cinema, all fire and brimstone with no restraint. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't itching to see some payback. Michael's composure is admirable, sure, but a part of me, the part that's been conditioned by years of flashy action flicks, is eager for that moment of sweet revenge. If not from Michael, then maybe from the hot-headed Sonny. And then it happens. A scene unfolds that can only be described as, well, a masterpiece. Michael meets with Sollozzo and that same police officer who had the gall to slap him earlier. The tension is palpable as Michael excuses himself to the bathroom, retrieves a hidden gun, and returns. What happens next is unlike anything I've ever seen in demon cinema. No flashy spells, no over-the-top action sequences. Just Michael, a gun, and 2 clean shots to the head as a train roars by, masking the sound. The theater erupts in cheers. The elf beside me is on his feet, fist pumping the air. Yes. That's it. That's what I'm talking about. I'm almost deafened by the reaction, but I can't blame them. This scene, it's something else. There's a simplicity to it, a brutal efficiency that sends chills down my spine. It's not about magical prowess or demonic strength. It's about decision, action, consequence. As the implications of what we've just witnessed sink in, I can feel a wave of stunned appreciation ripple through the audience. I lean back in my seat, a mix of emotions swirling inside me. Excitement at what I've just seen. Anticipation for what's to come. And, if I'm being honest, a touch of fear. Not of the violence on screen, but of the impact this film could have. POV, the name's Rupert Darkflame. Yeah, that Darkflame family. The one with the famous actors. But unlike my younger brother Damien, I'm not exactly the family's pride and joy. For 30 years, I've been waiting. Hoping. Praying to whatever dark gods would listen for a demon studio to create a film I could proudly call a masterpiece. But year after year, I've been disappointed. It's why I'm not following in Damien's footsteps. Why my family looks at me like I'm some kind of failed experiment. Because I refuse to settle for mediocrity. 10 years ago, I made my debut. The film was trash, pure and simple. I can still hear the snickers from demons, humans, and elves alike. It was humiliating. So I quit. Or at least, that's what everyone thinks. My family tried to talk me out of it. Who cares what they think, they said. The money's good, isn't it? But I couldn't accept that. Is it so wrong to want to be part of something good? I've been searching ever since. Meeting with studio executives, trying to find someone who gets it. But all they see are dollar signs. They don't understand that quality and profit aren't mutually exclusive. Make a good film, and the money will follow. Is that concept really so hard to grasp? The demon film industry, it infuriates me. We're so far behind, it's embarrassing. But now I'm watching The Demonfather, and I've lost count of how many times I've felt goosebumps. It's everything I've been waiting for. And yet, I feel conflicted. Regretful. A few weeks ago, I received a script. The Demonfather, it was called. I barely skimmed it before tossing it aside. It didn't seem interesting, and when I saw the writer's name Arthur Morningstar, I scoffed. Threw it back to my manager without a second thought. Now I'm kicking myself. Hard. As I watch this film unfold, as I see the depth, the nuance, the sheer craftsmanship on display, I can't help but think of what could have been. I could have been part of this. I could have been up there on that screen, making history. Instead, I'm just another face in the crowd, watching as someone I dismissed, redefines demon cinema. I've spent years searching for the perfect demon film, only to reject it when it was right in front of me. All because I couldn't see past a name, past my own preconceptions. As the film continues, I find myself both elated and devastated. Elated because finally, there's a demon film worthy of praise. I watch, transfixed, as Sunny's character unfolds on screen. The role I was supposed to play. The role I rejected like an idiot. Sunny's hot-headed, sure, but there's something endearing about his fierce protectiveness of his sister. When he beats the hell out of Carlo for abusing Connie, I can't help but nod in approval. But then, Carlo's abuse escalates, and I feel a knot forming in my stomach. If I were Sunny, I'd do more than just rough the bastard up. I'd end him. Seems I'm not alone in that sentiment. The theater is buzzing with barely contained rage. A frost demon in front of me snarls, if I met that Carlo guy in person, I'd give him a taste of my glacier crush spell. See how he likes being on the receiving end of some pain. Glacier crush? Too quick, a succubus to my left hisses. I'd torture him slowly. Make him beg for death. I can't help but chuckle darkly at their words. Glancing towards the front rows, I spot the actor who plays Carlo squirming in his seat. Poor bastard. Hope he's got good security when he leaves the theater. As the scene continues, showing a pregnant Connie enduring more abuse, I feel my blood boil. Damn it, Sunny. How can you not know what's happening? The audience around me is practically frothing at the mouth, desperate for some sweet revenge. The scene shifts, and we see a woman tending to children when the phone rings. She answers, and her expression changes as she listens to the voice on the other end. Without a word, she hands the phone to Sunny. What? Sunny's surprise quickly morphs into fury. His eyes blaze with a rage that sends a shiver down my spine. You just wait there. He slams the phone down, muttering through gritted teeth, "That son of a bitch." The anticipation in the theater is palpable. I can feel it crackling in the air around me. This is it. Carlo's about to get what's coming to him, and by the dark gods, we're all here for it. Sonny, true to his hot-headed nature, storms out and jumps into his car. The Corleone men look on, bewildered by his sudden fury, but they don't dare intervene. As Sonny peels away, the excitement in the audience reaches a fever pitch. That loudmouthed dwarf from earlier is at it again, but this time, his outburst mirrors what we're all thinking. Haha. Sonny's about to whoop that Carlo's ass, he exclaims, practically bouncing in his seat. For once, nobody shushes him. We're all too caught up in the moment, too eager to see justice served. I can't help but smile, agreeing with the dwarf's excitement. We're all anticipating some well-deserved payback. But as the scene shifts to a toll booth, I feel a strange sense of unease creeping in. Why does this scene at the toll booth need to be included? I mutter, more to myself than anyone else. The human beside me chuckles, it's filler, obviously. I shake my head, unconvinced. Filler? So far, this film hasn't wasted a single frame. It's odd. Heh, you're only saying that because it's the first time we've seen such an engaging demon film, the human replies with a smirk. Just watch the movie. I settle back into my seat, uneasy, as Sonny waits for the toll booth operator. The tension in the theater is palpable. Suddenly, the toll booth operator ducks, and several demon men emerge, wielding Tommy guns adorned with powerful runic magic. They're aiming straight at Sonny. Shit. I exclaim, my heart racing. Those are enchanted weapons. They'll tear through protection spells like paper. Someone nearby shouts, desperation in their voice, "Run, Sonny. Get out of there." The audience is in an uproar. Despite Sonny's hot-headedness, he's become a favorite. He's the character I should have played, and now. It's over in seconds. The scene that should have been Sonny's moment of revenge becomes his brutal end. The gunshots are deafening as Sonny tries to escape, but it's futile. He's caught in a hail of bullets, falling to the ground only to be riddled with more. Fuck, I curse under my breath, watching Sonny's life ebb away in a pool of blood. This is bullshit, someone nearby shouts, echoing the sentiment rippling through the crowd. The shock in the theater is palpable. This isn't how it was supposed to go. Sonny was supposed to save the day, to be the avenging brother. Instead, he's been cut down in a moment of vulnerability, caught off guard and alone. As the scene fades, I'm left with a whirlwind of emotions. Raymond Crow's POV, I'm the poor sap who played Carlo. Right now, I'm feeling the heat of 100 deadly stares boring into the back of my head. Those tough-looking demons and stocky dwarfs? They're looking at me like they're planning my murder in excruciating detail. Being a half-demon, half-human hasn't exactly been a walk in the park. Humans don't trust me, demons look down on me. It's why I chose to settle in the Morningstar Kingdom. Sure, it's a demon realm, but the discrimination here is, well, let's say it's the lesser of two evils. Right now, though? I'm wondering if I made the right choice. The hatred radiating from the audience is almost tangible. I can practically taste it. And yet, there's a part of me that's thrilled. Terrified, sure, but also exhilarated. For the first time in my career, people are reacting to my performance. Strongly. Viscerally. It's not the adoration I dreamed of, but hey, any attention is good attention in this business, right? I've always dreamed of being a star, but good roles for someone like me? They're rarer than a kind word in the 9 hells. I've often thought about packing up and trying my luck in the dwarven kingdoms, or maybe even with the elves. Their entertainment industry is light years ahead of ours. But now? Now I'm not so sure I need to leave. Because this film, this Demonfather, it's something else entirely. And it was made right here, in the demon realm I'd almost given up on. And it was created by Arthur Morningstar, the prince I'd been previously despising. The guy I thought was just another entitled royal brat playing at being an artist. Shows what I know, huh? As I watch the audience react, humans, elves, dwarves, demons, all captivated by the same story, I can't help but smile. Yeah, they hate my character right now. They probably want to see Carlo suffer a slow, painful death. But that hatred? It's born from investment in the story. In the characters. In this world Arthur has created. I might be public enemy number one in this theater right now, but I'm also part of something groundbreaking. Something that could change everything for actors like me. So let them glare. Let them mutter their threats. I'll take it all with a smile. Because for the first time in my career, I'm part of a film that matters. POV, if someone had told me this morning that I'd be utterly engrossed in a demon film by nightfall, I'd have laughed in their face. But here I am, Diane James, esteemed elf critic from the Moon Kingdom, completely captivated by the Demonfather. It's as if the sun has decided to rise in the west. A demon film, of all things, has managed to engage every fiber of my being. We elves from the Moon Kingdom, we're known for our prowess in arts and music. And as a critic? Well, let's just say picky doesn't even begin to cover it. Take that human film, Stars in the Cave, for instance. Humans raved about it, called it a masterpiece. Me? I gave it a 3.1 star rating. You'd have thought I'd insulted their firstborns. You don't know anything about films, Diane, they said. Diane James doesn't know what she's talking about. I just scoffed. If only they knew that a 3.1 from me is practically a standing ovation. In my 3 years as a critic, I've never given higher than a 3.4, and that was to The Moon's Lullaby, a film from my home kingdom. But this Demonfather. If it maintains this quality to the end, I might just do the unthinkable. I might give it a full 5 stars. The thought both excites and terrifies me. A perfect score? From me? To a demon film, no less? It's unprecedented. It's almost scandalous. And yet, as I watch the story unfold, as I find myself invested in these demon characters and their complex world, I can't deny the artistry on display. The nuanced storytelling, the compelling performances, the sheer audacity of its vision, it's unlike anything I've seen before. I can already imagine the uproar my review will cause. My fellow elf critics will be appalled. The humans will cry foul, accusing me of bias against their works. And the demons? They probably won't believe it themselves. But a critic's job isn't to pander to expectations or maintain the status quo. It's to recognize and celebrate true artistry, wherever it may be found. And if that artistry happens to come from an unexpected source, a demon prince, of all people, then so be it. As I'm lost in thought, contemplating the potential impact of my review, my fellow elf critic, Ryu, interrupts with a complaint. If Carlo isn't killed for being responsible for Sunny's death, then I don't care how good the film is. I'll give it a bad review, he declares, his voice dripping with disdain. I can't help but sigh. This is exactly the kind of short-sighted critique that gives critics a bad name. Well, you really can't rate a film like that just because you hate one character, I point out. A good critic should evaluate the film as a whole, its narrative structure, character development, cinematography, and overall impact. You shouldn't let personal feelings about a single character overshadow the entire work. Ryu scoffs, clearly not impressed by my attempt at wisdom. Feelings definitely matter in rating, Diane. If I don't like it, I'll rate it badly. I shrug, realizing this is a losing battle. Your life, your choice, I concede. Just watch the film and see if it will satisfy your feelings. I can feel Ryu's annoyance radiating off him, but I choose to ignore it. There's no point in arguing further. Instead, I turn my attention back to the screen, eager to see how the story unfolds. As I refocus on the film, I can't help but reflect on the difference between Ryu's approach and my own. Yes, emotional engagement is important in cinema. But allowing a knee-jerk reaction to a single plot point to determine your entire opinion of a film? That's not criticism. That's just being a fan, or in this case, an anti-fan. True criticism requires objectivity, the ability to step back and evaluate the work as a whole. It's about recognizing artistry and craftsmanship, even in stories or characters we might not personally like. And the Demonfather, regardless of what happens to Carlo, has displayed an abundance of both artistry and craftsmanship. Whatever comes next, I'm determined to judge it fairly, based on its merits as a complete work of cinema. As the next scene begins, I lean forward slightly, my critical faculties fully engaged. Let's see what other surprises this demon film has in store for us. This film is nothing short of a roller coaster, each scene more gripping than the last. The attempt on Don Corleone's life, the tense hospital scene with Michael protecting his vulnerable father, the humiliation of Michael followed by his cold revenge, each moment is etched into my memory with stunning clarity. And then there's Carlo's abuse of Connie, her heartbreaking call to Sunny, and the shocking twist of Sunny's death just when we thought he was riding to the rescue. These scenes don't just play out on the screen, they resonate within me, sending shivers down my spine and raising goosebumps on my skin. The artistry is undeniable. Each actor embodies their character with such conviction that I often forget I'm watching a performance. It's as if I'm peering through a window into this complex, dangerous world. Of course, there's the unexpected nudity in Michael's scene with Apollonia. It's tastefully done, but as a woman, I can't help but feel a twinge of disapproval at Michael's betrayal of Kay. Yes, multiple wives aren't uncommon in the world, but Michael's secrecy about it leaves a bitter taste. I find myself sympathizing with Kay, left alone and worrying. Perhaps it's because she's an elf like me, but I think it's more than that. Her situation speaks to a universal fear of betrayal and abandonment. Despite these moral quandaries, or perhaps because of them, I find myself utterly engrossed in the film. It's not just entertaining, it's challenging. It's forcing me to confront my own beliefs and prejudices, to question the nature of loyalty, family, and power. This, I realize, is what great cinema does. It doesn't just show us a story, it makes us part of it. It provokes thought, stirs emotion, and lingers in the mind long after the credits roll.